Chapter 46-41. Okay, I'll give you a reasonable explanation. Yi Yuqin sat down and went over the accounts with Gu Qingze. When we were young, Bairan needed money to eat, right? She also needed money to wear it, right? She needed money to use it, and so did her school fees, right? I had to pay for 2 children's school fees, and that was a huge expense. Yeah. Bairan was disgusted when she heard that. Oh my God. Did she have to calculate money for that too? Ever since she was young, she and her cousin ate dumplings and wore what Yi Yuqin left behind. Speaking of wearing, the school uniforms when she was young cost money. They weren't expensive, only a few dozen yuan for a set, and 100 yuan for a full set of winter and summer clothes. Yi Yuqin didn't pay, so she was the only one in the whole school who didn't have a school uniform. That wasn't all. What kind of clothes were Yi Yuqin's leftover clothes? They were gaudy, old-fashioned, and too big. However, Yi Yuqin didn't have much money at that time, so she didn't have any extra money to spend on clothes. She could understand that, and she never complained. However, now that she was using this to calculate money, she didn't understand why her aunt's style clothes were worth money. Needless to say, they were used. Sometimes, after school, Bairan would deliberately stay behind to clean up. It wasn't because she was diligent, but because she would sweep around the classroom and secretly take the pencils and erasers that some students had left in the recycling bin. They were still usable and old. Because she didn't have any. Some students were lazy, and when their pencils were bald, they wouldn't be happy to use them again. Bairan would take them, cut them with a knife, and use them for herself. When she was young, she had to practice writing with a fountain pen, but the fountain pens at that time were very expensive. When she went home and asked Yi Yuqin for money to buy one, Yi Yuqin would use all kinds of excuses to say that she didn't have money. The only fountain pen she used in high school was given to her by her homeroom teacher. That was because she saw Bairan using a pencil in her writing class. She was too embarrassed to say that because of her shyness. The other children in the class all used fountain pens, but she was the only one who used a shabby pencil. Therefore, she gave her an extra fountain pen. This fountain pen was very durable, and it was not easy to get, so Bairan had always treasured it. This fountain pen accompanied her to university. Later, when the tip of the pen broke, she kept it in her notebook. Let's talk about eating later. Bairan had never participated in any of the class activities, such as the spring and autumn excursions, summer camps, or winter camps. This was especially true for the summer and winter camps. At that time, the quota depended on results. Bairan's results were the best, but she didn't have a chance because she had to pay for it. She couldn't afford it. He had never been to the spring and autumn excursions. She could only stay at home, do her homework, and imagine her classmates participating in the spring and autumn excursions. She should be very happy, right? In fact, she did not feel inferior or sad to receive such treatment because the Yi family's conditions were not particularly good. She was already very grateful that he was willing to take her in and support her. But, it was too much for Yi Yuqin to use this to ask Gu Qingze for money. Bairan was furious, but Yi Yuqin continued, "When I was young, Bairan's parents had an accident, and I followed them. That was also money, right? Bairan was admitted to a university. In order to raise her tuition fees, I almost sacrificed my son's chance to study." Chapter 46-42. Just think about it. With Yi Yuqin's desire for her son to succeed, if her disappointing son had the chance to go to university, would she be willing to let him go? When she was admitted to university, he was in the middle school exams. In the end, he did not even get into a decent high school. When she first received the graduation notice, Yi Yuqin thought it was for her son. When she realized it was for her, her face fell. The first thing she said was to stop studying and go out to work. She had worked so hard to prepare for the college entrance exams. How could she give up just like that? Bairan begged, but Yi Yuqin refused to take out the money. She said she would borrow it, but Yi Yuqin did not waver. She worked for the entire summer break. In the end, with the recommendation of her high school teacher, she successfully got a student loan. However, she still needed a little more. In the end, she knelt in front of Yi Yuqin's room for an entire night before she finally agreed. She even borrowed it. In the end, Bai Ran studied and worked part-time while paying off Yi Yuqin and the student loan. Actually, she could pay off the student loan after she started working. However, Bai Ran did not like owing people since she was young. Especially when it came to the country. When she successfully got the student loan, she was really grateful. At that time, she even paid Yi Yuqin back with interest. In the end, in her mouth, it turned out that all this money was provided by her resources. What a joke. Why did she always say things like this? Bai Dan was furious beyond belief. How could Gu Qingze not tell that these were all excuses Yi Yuqin used to get the monetary gift? Why? Don't tell me you think that our Bai Ran is not worth 5 million? Yi Yuqin deliberately provoked him. Gu Qingze raised his eyebrows. Why is Bai Ran's value measured in 5 million? It was simply insulting to measure her with money. Yi Yuqin said, then give me 5 million as a monetary gift. Otherwise, you won't have peace even if you marry her. With that, she hung up harshly. Gu Qingze held his phone and felt that this was interesting. As the eldest son of the Gu family, this was the first time in his life that he was threatened by a small town. From her tone, it seemed that if he insisted on not giving her the 5 million, she had other means. Gu Qingze wanted to see for himself. Ever since he was young, he had been by Gu Jinglian's side and had seen many dark side things, but he had digested them well. After hanging up the phone, Bai Ran took the phone and said angrily, actually, you don't have to care about her. She has never been reasonable. I just want to hear what kind of high-sounding reasons she will come up with. Bai Ran smiled. This aunt of mine is very difficult to deal with. I've guessed it. She must have found me at next home. Next. Gu Qingze's interest was piqued. What next house? After graduation, she went around setting me up on blind dates. She specifically picked those weird-looking, middle-aged, greasy men for me. However, they were all very rich. My aunt's request is very simple. No matter what her identity is, as long as she gets married, she will be given a house. Why did you give her a house? Because her son is disappointing. If he doesn't have a house, which girl would fancy him? Gu Qingze had truly witnessed what it meant to be shameless. Chapter 46-43. Gu Qingze was a little angry. Ever since they were young, Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho had bad tempers. Especially Gu Jinglian, who would give him a hard time. Under the violent education of this pair of clown parents, his temper could not be any softer and gentler. For as long as he could remember, it seemed that he rarely got angry, and he rarely got angry over someone. Because of Yi Yuqin, Gu Qingze was very angry. He had never seen such a shameless woman. She actually used a dignified name to wantonly exploit her niece. She did not even hesitate to use Bai Ran's marriage to scheme against her, just for her son's wedding house. The last time he saw Bai Ran at the cafe, she was on a blind date with a man. But he was a little surprised. Why did she need a blind date at such a young age? Now he knew. It turned out that she had been used by Yi Yuqin. In fact, although Gu Qingze's current income was based on an annual salary, he had been self-reliant ever since he was in university. Relying on his own abilities, he had accumulated quite a bit of savings. Taking out 5 million yuan was not a big deal. In fact, as long as Yi Yuqin was sincere and considerate of Bai Ran, even if she did not treat her as her own daughter, at least she did not just scheme and disregard Bai Ran. Then, he would definitely treat Yi Yuqin well on behalf of Bai Ran. However, Yi Yuqin's insatiable greed, especially her ugly table manners, made Gu Qingze feel disgusted from the bottom of his heart. However, Bai Ran was not very worried. After all, from what she knew, this husband of hers was just a salaried worker with some family background. 1 or 2 million yuan might be fine, but 5 million yuan was definitely not enough. She just felt sorry for him because he had to deal with such a difficult relative because of her. Bai Ran had never understood Gu Qingze's real background. It was not that she did not care. It was that she did not care. Regardless of whether the man was rich or poor, since they were married, no matter what, they were husband and wife. When she married him, she even thought that even if this man was burdened with debt, she would bite the bullet and continue to be with him. You don't have to take my aunt's words to heart. Bai Ran said calmly, no matter what she says, just ignore it forever. Gu Qingze raised his eyebrows. Has she always been so harsh to you? Isn't this how it should be? Bai Yan smiled bitterly. She's not my biological mother. As the saying goes, blood is thicker than water. After all, we're not blood related. If it weren't for my uncle, she and I wouldn't be related at all. Back then, she adopted me. To put it bluntly, you probably don't know the traditions of my hometown. Where we come from, the older and younger sisters usually don't have much status. As an elder sister, I have a nickname called Younger Brother Demon Helper. Voldemort? That's not it. It means that the elder sister has to take over the baton from the mother and work hard for the younger brother. Chapter 46-44. The more he listened, the angrier he got. He dared not imagine if he had appeared a little later. Would she be married to someone else now? Given her weak appearance, would she be able to resist Yi Yuqin to the end? Or perhaps, she had married a man she did not love because of her resistance. He was a little angry. He was very concerned about this matter. Actually, he knew that his wife's marriage to him was probably a little rebellious. At least, half of it was to resist Yi Yuqin's tyranny. What about the other half? Was there a reason for it? Did she still remember him? She probably did not remember him. He did not know if she still remembered the boy who chased after her car when she left when they were young. What are you thinking about? Bai Yan interrupted his meditation. Seeing that his expression was not good, she thought that it was because of Yi Yuqin's matter. She immediately comforted him. Don't be angry. You don't have to lower yourself to my aunt's level. Okay. He nodded. Let's go back. Okay. He started the car and drove back home. They had yet to get the property deed, so the new house had not been handed over yet. However, the two planned to add some soft decorations on top of the house's hardcover. The style of the house mainly depended on the soft decorations. She liked Northern European and Chinese styles, while Gu Qingze, who had lived in the Gu residence since he was young, was sick of the Chinese style, so he leaned toward American and Northern European styles. The two of them had the same interests. Since they both liked Northern Europe, then they would design in the direction of Northern Europe's soft accessories. Bai Hao naturally didn't need to worry about finding a design company. Gu Qingze would arrange it well. What? In the office, Gu Linshi leaned toward Yun Tianyu with great interest. He was extremely surprised. Did you say that he's married? Yes, a secret marriage. Yun Tianyu leaned on the sofa with a lazy look. Do you still remember the bet I made with him when I was bored? He must have done it on purpose. Gu Linshi, who was sitting in front of him, was dressed in a well-ironed suit. After more than a decade, he had grown from a handsome boy to a handsome man. His tall height, well-proportioned body, and the suit made him look even more handsome. He leaned forward with interest and couldn't help but ask, that day, did he take that girl to buy a house? Yes. Yun Tianyu was exasperated. I didn't expect him to be the first to get married among us. I thought that you would be the first one to get married. In the end, you don't even have a girlfriend. Instead, the youngest one got married in a flash. First, it's a flash marriage, and now it's a secret marriage. What kind of tricks is this kid playing? The Gu family doesn't know about this at all? Yun Tianyu was surprised at this. He originally thought that Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho would have seen Bai Ran. Even I haven't seen that girl before. I don't know what that kid is up to. He's so mysterious. Yun Tianyu furrowed his brows. Are you really brothers? Yes. If Xiao Yichen gets married in a flash, even if daddy and mommy don't know, I'll definitely find out. Hee hee. Gu Linshi coldly said, that kid and I grew up together. Our brotherhood isn't as deep as yours. He silently cursed in his heart, this brat, marriage is such a big thing, and he didn't even discuss it with me in advance. Chapter 46-45. He's closest to your Auntie Chu Ho, but I've never heard him mention this to her. Gu Linshi shook his head. I don't know if he did. Why don't you go back and ask around? Who knows, he might have told everyone except you. Gu Linshi's lips twitched as his eyelids twitched. Really? Did this brat really tell everyone except for him? That was impossible. Still, if that was not possible, why did Yin Tianyu know about it but not him? With such doubts in his heart, he returned home after work and happened to bump into Chu Ho embroidering. She had recently become obsessed with embroidery. While others were still obsessed with diamond stickers, Chu Ho had already caught up with the trend and was obsessed with embroidery. During this period, there was a sudden rise in the embroidery trend. However, embroidery was not something that anyone could embroider. Gu Jinglian and Gu Linshi thought that Chu Ho was just doing it on a whim. It was too difficult for her, who was used to holding a gun, to handle something as thin as an embroidery needle. But to everyone's surprise, not only was it not a momentary interest, but it was also a very good game. Gu Linshi stood at the door and watched her for a while. Chu Ho was so engrossed in embroidery that she did not realize that he had returned. He stared at her for a long time. Perhaps it was because they had been together for a long time, but after so many years, Chu Ho did not show any signs of aging. She and Gu Jinglian seemed to have used some kind of immortality method. Other than their facial features becoming more mature and their smile showing some wrinkles, there were no other changes. Chu Ho did not usually do any expensive skincare. Other than a few creams, she did not learn from the other rich ladies to plant golden thread or inject sheep placenta into her body. Instead, she exercised frequently. Chu Ho had been training since she was young. If she did not exercise during her free time, Chu Ho would feel especially lethargic. After so many years, Gu Jinglian did not change much other than his character becoming more mature. Rather than saying that he was steady, it would be better to say that he had already stepped into the life of an old man. In the morning, she held Chu Ho's hand and went for a walk. When she was running, he would carry the birdcage in the park and enjoy the morning breeze. Gu Jinglian was obsessed with raising parrots. Raising a parrot was one thing, but other people were walking a dog, but he insisted on walking a bird. Therefore, Gu Linshi said that Gu Jinglian was already an old man. Brother, why are you back so early today? Gu Xinghan's voice sounded. Upon hearing this, Chu He immediately raised her head and turned to look at the man. In the afternoon, the man was taking an afternoon nap on the recliner. When he saw that Gu Linshi had returned, he yawned lazily and sat up. Gu Xinghan had just turned 16 and was in the prime of his life. On his young but slightly immature handsome face, there was an innate rebellious and perverse look. Gu Xinghan was very rebellious, like an insufferably arrogant little devil. He seemed to have inexhaustible energy. Now, he had become Gu Jinglian's biggest headache. Chapter 46-46. When they were young, Gu Xinghan and Gu Linga looked quite alike. As they grew older, the difference in their looks began to be like heaven and earth. Gu Linga looked especially like Gu Jinglian. She had a bright appearance, especially her peach blossom eyes. She had inherited Gu Jinglian's exquisite eye shape, but she had a natural charm that girls should have. When she was young, people often said that if Linga grew up to be like Gu Jinglian, the people proposing marriage would probably trample over the Gu family's doorstep. Gu Jinglian snorted and said lightly, if Linga grew up, those unscrupulous boys would not even have the chance to cross the Gu family's threshold. Since they were young, Gu Jinglian favored Gu Linga, while Gu Xinghan was closer to Chu Ho. Opposites attract, this rule was so applicable in the Gu family. Gu Jinglian's temper was quite bad, but he could do nothing about Gu Linga. At this moment, Gu Linga said that she wanted to fly a kite, so Gu Jinglian eagerly took his precious daughter to the park. Chu Ho was left at home to embroider, while Gu Xinghan took a nap and accompanied her. Linshi, why are you back so early today? She was a little surprised. Gu Linshi casually put his briefcase on the table and smiled. There's nothing to do at the company, so I came back early. Oh. Chu Ho nodded and took out her embroidery work as if it was a treasure. She leaned in front of him and said proudly, "Look, how is my embroidery?" Very good. You're too perfunctory. You didn't even look at it much." Gu Linshi was helpless. "Mom, you know that I don't know anything about embroidery. As long as it's embroidered by you, I think it looks good." Chu Ho smiled and did not blame him. She took the embroidery back to the table and began to embroider seriously. Gu Xinghan yawned again. "Mom, you've been embroidering with your head down. Isn't your neck sore?" "It's not sore. Be careful of cervical spondylosis." Chu Ho glared at him. Gu Xinghan felt guilty from the stare and whistled, "Pretend I didn't say anything. I'm just concerned." Gu Linshi suddenly asked, "Mom, has Chingza been back recently?" "Him?" Chu Ho looked up, narrowed his eyes, and said, I almost forgot about him if you didn't mention him." Ha ha ha. If second brother heard this, he would probably cry in the toilet. "Humph, your second brother's heart isn't so delicate. He cries so easily. It's not like he was a child anymore. I thought that he would come back to visit you soon." Chu Ho was speechless. "That brat has almost forgotten all about me and his father." Gu Xinghan could not help but complain again, "Aren't you the same as Dad? You've also forgotten about him completely." Chu Ho's face turned slightly red. "Don't you dare talk too much." Gu Xinghan quickly raised his hand and patted his face. "Big mouth, mother. I'll slap myself." "You don't have to do it." Chu Ho was satisfied. She turned her head and looked at Gu Linshi. "Why are you asking about him?" "Nothing. I saw that he hasn't been home recently, so I'm just asking. Maybe he's busy with work." Chu Ho did not take it to heart. Gu Linshi touched his nose. "Haven't you heard from him recently? Didn't he talk to you on the phone?" Chapter 46-47. Gu Xinghan said coldly again, "Didn't mother say that she had almost forgotten about second brother completely?" Chu Ho glared at him again. "Gu Xinghan. Why are you so talkative? Hiya. I just pity second brother. He doesn't even have a sense of existence anymore." Before Gu Xinghan could finish speaking, he quickly dodged. As expected, Chu Ho picked up the phone beside her and threw it at him. As he dodged, he reached out his hand and accurately caught the phone that she had thrown at him. "Mom, your temper is getting worse. Are you going through menopause soon?" As soon as Gu Xinghan finished speaking, Chu Ho suddenly stood up and looked furious. "Why? Are you itching for a beating? How many days have I not taught you a lesson? Have you become arrogant? Well, I'm going upstairs to read." Gu Xinghan finished speaking resentfully, then walked around her and went upstairs dejectedly. Gu Linshi looked at Chu Ho, who had run upstairs, and shook his head. His face was full of helplessness and affection as an elder brother. Xinghan is at the age where he is mischievous. Chu Ho was furious. "You said I'm going through menopause, but he's still in his rebellious phase." The mention of menopause seemed to have hit Chu Ho's sore spot. Previously, Chu Ho's temper had been particularly irritable and she had been suffering from insomnia. When Gu Jinglian took her to the hospital said that she was going through menopause and that these were normal reactions. Telling a woman that she was going through menopause was undoubtedly telling a man, "You can't do it anymore." It was the same critical hit. Chu Ho almost kicked up a fuss in the doctor's office. She said a famous saying, "Menopause? I'm still so young." Imagine a woman in her 40s saying that she was still so young. In the entire office, the doctors huddled together and hugged each other as they trembled. They looked at the angry Chu Ho but did not dare to say anything. At that time, Gu Jinglian was afraid of angering her, so he didn't say anything at the scene. When he got home and Chu Ho wasn't around, he mentioned it to Gu Linshi and Gu Xinghan. They laughed so hard that they almost couldn't breathe. It must have been hard on him. He had such a strong desire to live. In order to avoid Chu Ho's violence, he had to hold back his laughter all the way home. During dinner, he even had to pretend to be calm. He imitated Chu Ho and said, "I'm still so young. Ha 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 ha. She's already in her 40s. Does she still think she's a little girl?" Of course, Chu Ho didn't know that Gu Jinglian was bad-mouthing her behind her back. Over the past 10 years, Chu Ho had always felt that time had passed abnormally fast. She couldn't even feel the passage of time. 10 years had passed in the blink of an eye. Sometimes, it was inevitable that she would feel melancholic. Over 10 years had passed too quickly. In another decade or so, she and Gu Jinglian should be a little older. People were not afraid of aging. It was just that the older they got, the more things and people they missed. When they were young, they were high-spirited. When they were slightly older, they had more worries in their hearts. Chu Ho sat down in her seat. Gu Linshi walked over and patted her back gently. "Mom, sometimes, don't hold it in. Just hit him if you want to. That kid has a thick skin and can take your punches. I'm afraid that in the future, when I can't hit him anymore, he'll hit me. Do you think my dad is a pushover? No matter how old he is, if he slaps that kid, he'll be plastered to the wall." Chu Ho was speechless. She asked, "You were just talking about Xianxia. Why are you suddenly talking about him?" Well, the topic returned to that. Chapter 46-48. Seeing his hesitation, Chu Ho suddenly became nervous. What's wrong? Did something happen to him? If Gu Lingshi's expression was like this at the mention of Gu Xinghan, then the lad must have gotten into trouble. However, if Gu Lingshi's expression was like this at the mention of Gu Xianxia, then Chu Ho would be worried that something might have happened to him. Gu Lingshi hurriedly explained, "Mom, don't overthink it. Tell me quickly." Gu Lingshi touched his nose. "I don't know if he mentioned it to you, but judging from your reaction, I don't think so. Since you know, then tell me." "He's married." Gu Lingshi quickly reported the situation. Chu Ho did not react for a moment. Huh. However, after a while, her expression gradually changed. "He's married?" "Yes. He even bought a house." Chu Ho was stunned for a long time. His brows furrowed, and he was slightly angry. "Why didn't he tell me, then?" "He didn't tell me either." "Then, how did you know?" "Well, Yun Tianyu told me that he went to Spring River Royal Seal to buy a wedding house." Spring River Royal Seal was a property developed by Xingyu Financial Group. Chu Ho knew this. That lad is all grown up now. Why didn't he tell us that he's married? Chu Ho snorted. Is he afraid that I won't agree to it? I'm so open-minded. As long as it's what he likes, I don't mind even if I have to break my leg. I'm guessing that there's something he can't say. Chu Ho glanced at him. Really? When are we going to do an unannounced visit? An unannounced visit? Cough. Gu Linshi moved closer to her ear. I heard that the lady has moved to Qing's apartment. I also checked her schedule. The day after tomorrow, when she's off and Qingza is at work, we can make a surprise visit. Just the two of us? Do you want Dad to go, too? I don't know. Chu Ho was suspicious again. What identity are we going to use? I don't look like Qingza, so I'll say that I'm his friend. Then I'll also say that I'm his friend. Gu Lingshi couldn't help but say, Mom, at your age, it's not appropriate to call him a friend, right? Chu Ho clenched his fists. You think I'm old too? No, Chu Ho suggested again, then I'll say that I'm his aunt. Gu Lingshi finally nodded. Gu Lingshi had plenty of ways to investigate Bai Ran's background. So, just as he found out, Gu Qingze went to work early that day while Bai Ran was resting at home. At noon, when she was about to go out to buy some groceries, she saw Gu Lingshi and Chu Ho standing at the door. They had just arrived and were about to ring the doorbell. Bai Hao was stunned. The reason why he was surprised was because the woman in the mask looked a lot like Gu Qingze. Although he couldn't see his entire face, that pair of eyes was exactly the same. Bai Hao looked at Chu Ho and asked, "You are? Oh, is this Qingze's house?" Chu Ho asked even though he already knew the answer. When Bai Hao saw them, she guessed that these two people probably had something to do with Gu Qingze. "You are? I'm Qingze's aunt. I came once before, but I haven't been here in a long time. Especially when I saw such a beautiful lady opening the door, I was afraid that I might have mistaken her for someone else." Chapter 46-49. Bai Ran ushered them into the house. Chu Ho and Gu Linshi looked at each other. Through the mask, Chu Ho whispered to Gu Linshi, "This girl is so careless. She probably thinks you look like Qingze." Chu Ho nodded. The two of them entered the house and Bai Ran invited them to the sofa. She seemed to be in a hurry. After all, it was her first time receiving elders from her family. She wrung her hands and asked tentatively, Qingze is still at work. Should I call him back?" "Oh, it's okay." Chu Ho quickly waved his hand. Gu Linshi said, "It's okay. We're just here to sit. If he's not here, we'll wait for him to come back from work." Bai Ran was puzzled. Really? Since they were here to look for Gu Qingze, the atmosphere would be awkward if she was alone when he was not around. Chu Ho quickly changed the topic. "Do you have tea?" "Yes," Bai Ran immediately reacted and said apologetically, "I'm sorry. I've been here for so long and I haven't poured you any tea. I'll go boil some water first." "No rush." Gu Linshi watched her go into the study and looked at Chu Ho. Chu Ho nodded approvingly. "Yes, she's quite pretty. It's just that she looks familiar." "Yes. Her name is Bai Ran." This name sounds familiar too. It had been so long ago that Gu Linshi had almost forgotten that this name had once appeared in his life. When he was young, there seemed to be a girl who was good friends with Gu Qingze. When he mentioned the name, Chu Ho instantly remembered. Could it be that Ran? Unlike Gu Linshi, Chu Ho was an adult. Therefore, his memory was deeper than Gu Linshi's. Bai Ran. Chu Ho immediately thought of this name. When we were young, wasn't there a girl named Ran, who was good friends with Qingze? Now that you mention it, I remember. Indeed, there was such a girl. Could it be that this Bai Ran was the Ran that Gu Qingze missed so much when he was young? If that was the case, then it wouldn't be hard to explain why Gu Qingze got married so quickly. He was deeply in love with Xianxia. Even after so long, the photos of him and Xianxia when they were young were still in his drawer. Gu Linshi and Chu He exchanged glances with each other. "Wait a minute. I'll ask her when she comes over." "Okay." The two of them sat upright. When Bai Ran walked over with a cup of tea, Gu Linshi pretended to ask casually, "You live with Qingze? Are you married?" Bai Hao was bewildered. He lifted his head awkwardly. She didn't know how to ask this question. She didn't know if she should tell them the truth. Most importantly, she did not know if Gu Qingze had any intention of announcing their marriage to his family. They had a secret marriage. Gu Linshi saw that she was hesitating and immediately comforted her. "It's okay. Just say it. I heard that Qingze is married. It's just that he hasn't had the time to hold a wedding, right?" Bai Hao nodded. "Yes, we haven't had the time to hold a wedding. We are married. What's your name?" "Bai Ran." Bai Ran explained, Bai as in bye-bye, and Sheng as in Xinge. Chapter 46-50. "Oh, that's because I was adopted by my aunt when I was very young. Because I had to register for the household register, my aunt simply adopted me. Naturally, my surname was Jiang." When Chu Ho heard this, his heart ached. "Why were you adopted by your aunt when you were young?" "Because when I was very young, my parents died in a car accident. I followed my grandmother back to the countryside, but they were not in good health. They died when they were young. I had no choice but to follow uncle and aunt. How did this happen? As Chu-ho spoke, her age and identity matched. She was Bai Sheng, Gu Qing's childhood sweetheart. However, she did not seem to recognize her. Actually, she did not change much. But why did Bai Sheng not recognize her when she was standing right in front of her? Gu Linshi was not surprised. After all, it had been too long. It was normal for her not to remember. How young was Bai Sheng at that time? Some people had a deep memory and could remember things from when they were young, but some people could not remember. Therefore, Bai Sheng did not recognize their faces, but she did not treat them as strangers. Gu Linshi had changed a lot. Although Chu-ho had not changed much, Bai Sheng had always been with Gu Qingze and him. It was normal for her not to recognize Chu-ho. Bai Sheng smiled and said, "Actually, we got married in a hurry. To be more precise, we got married on the first day we met." Hiss. Chu-ho and Gu Linshi were shocked. They gasped in disbelief. "You got married on the first day you met? That's unbelievable." Bai Sheng's face turned even redder. She lowered her head and said embarrassedly, "Isn't it too sudden?" Chu-ho restrained her surprised expression and immediately smiled. "Isn't this a good thing?" "Yes, Qingze has reached the age to get married. You can work hard to have children." Chu-ho could not hide her desire to be a mother-in-law and began to urge them to have children. Hearing this, Bai Sheng's face turned even redder. He hurriedly said, "Isn't it too rushed to have a child? I haven't gotten to know him yet. We don't understand each other. We're already married. Wouldn't it be natural for us to have children?" Gu Linshi glanced at her coldly. She cursed silently in her heart. Even if you're in a hurry to have a grandchild, you shouldn't be so eager for quick success. He should at least restrain himself a little. What if he scared her? Bai Sheng was a little embarrassed. The awkward thing was that they were being urged to have a child right after they got married. Moreover, this woman was Gu Qing's aunt. If her mother-in-law urged her to have a child, she would have nothing to complain about. Even his aunt was urging him. It wasn't that she didn't like children, but she wasn't prepared. Uncle and aunt were in a mess now. She didn't know what to do. Her scalp went numb at the thought of her aunt's sky-high monetary gift. She didn't want to implicate Gu Qingze, but if Yi Yuqin really wanted to cause trouble, would Gu Qingze be disappointed and annoyed? Bai Sheng was now confused. She and Gu Qingze had gotten married on a whim. After being impulsive, a series of problems and effects caused by a flash marriage were troublesome. Bai Sheng sighed. Chapter 46-51. Chu-ho wanted to say something, but Gu Linshi nudged her arm and whispered, "Mom, can't you be a little more reserved? Don't push him so blatantly." Only after Gu Linshi's reminder did Chu-he restrain herself and quickly chimed in, "There's no rush, there's no rush. This matter really can't be rushed." Bai Ran blushed and lowered her head. She did not know what to say. There was a stalemate. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Seeing Bai Ran so shy, Chu-ho was a little embarrassed too. She smiled stiffly at Gu Linshi and reminded her, "Why don't we leave? You just got here and you want to leave?" Chu-ho did not say anything. She had nothing to say to this child. Firstly, she had pretended to be Gu Qing's aunt, so she felt a little guilty. Moreover, she would meet Bai Ran sooner or later as Bai Ran's mother-in-law. If she was exposed, it would be very awkward. Chu-ho was worried about this. She recognized Bai Ran as Gu Qing's childhood sweetheart. She had lost her parents at such a young age and was quite pitiful. She did not know how she had lived for the past 10 years. But now was not the time to talk about the past. The future was long. The most important thing now was that she had already figured out Bai Ran's identity and that Gu Qingze had gotten married in a flash. She was not a woman of unknown origin, so Chu-he was relieved. "We're just here to check out the house. Since Qingze is not home, we're going to leave too." Chu-ho stood up and pulled Gu Linshi's ear. Gu Linshi hissed in pain. He was already very old. He was a man in his 20s, but Chu Ho still pulled his ear all day long. Did he not care about his pride? Mom, let's go. Bai Ran saw them stand up and hurriedly stood up as well. You're leaving already? You've only been here for a while. I won't disturb you, haha. Bai Ran was a little embarrassed. But I haven't treated you properly yet. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Chu Ho then turned to Gu Linshi. Linshi, let's go. Bai Kun felt a little guilty. She thought that they had left in a hurry because she couldn't entertain them. However, she didn't know how to make them stay. She did not know how to get along with her relatives and friends. She was usually very quiet and was always alone in her room. Therefore, she was somewhat at a loss when facing two guests. However, she was too embarrassed to ask them to stay. She walked them to the elevator. Chu Ho repeatedly asked her to go back, but Bai Ran still refused. It was not until they entered the elevator and the door closed that she finally let out a sigh of relief. He was so nervous. Bai Ran returned to the house and hesitated for a moment before calling Gu Qingzi. Hello? What happened? Hubby, two people came to our house just now. One is your aunt, and the other is your friend? Aunt? Gu Qingzi's eyes twitched. Are they still there? When did he have an aunt? Even if they did, they weren't close. The direct and collateral branches of the Gu family formed their own network and didn't have close contact with each other. He didn't even remember what his aunt looked like. Hubby, your aunt looks a lot like you. Chapter 46-52. Since Bai Xing had already said so, Gu Qingzi would have wasted all the time he had spent with Chu Ho if he still did not react. However, I think your aunt is really young. She doesn't look like she's older than you. If she's your cousin, I'll believe her. After hanging up the phone, Gu Qingzi hesitated for a long time. Finally, he chose to call Chu Ho. The moment the call connected, Gu Qingzi said coldly, Mom, you came to my house just now? Kid, you still know to call me? Chu Ho said angrily, when did you get married? You didn't even tell me. Mom found out about this from Lin Shi. Where did he hear about it? When did Gu Linshi become such a blabbermouth? Anyway. Chu Ho said angrily, you shouldn't have kept it from me. Mom, did you recognize her? Gu Qingzi suddenly asked. There was silence on the other end for a while. Chu Ho said, Bai Xing must have suffered a lot. Yeah. Gu Qingzi sighed from the bottom of his heart. No matter what, at least in the future, I won't let her suffer a little. I don't care about the past, but since she's my wife, if anyone dares to bully her again, I won't let them off. After a pause, he sighed with lingering fear. No matter what, it's great to be able to meet her again. I thought I'd never see her again in my life. At that time, when he was young, he chased after her car. At that time, he did not hesitate to do anything because he felt that if he did not catch up, he might never see her again in his life. He did not expect that there would be such a freak combination of factors. When he recognized her as Bai Xing, he would never allow himself to let go again. Gu Qingzi had been a nostalgic person since he was young. A cup that had been used for 10 years, a blanket that had faded in color, but he still liked to hug it to sleep. A doll that he liked, no matter how old it was, he would still hug it in his arms and love it so much that he could not let it go. Once a nostalgic person fell in love with someone, it would last for a lifetime. Chu Ho knew that his son was nostalgic, so he did not rush him to get married so quickly. Liking someone was a lifelong thing. Chu Ho nodded and said, I'm glad you like it. I also like Bai Xing. You two have been the best since you were young. I'm also happy that you two can be together. Have you thought about when to hold the wedding? Chu Ho said, every girl looks forward to their wedding. You married her just like that, and you didn't even promise her when you would get married? Mom, she doesn't seem to recognize me. Gu Qingzi sounded a little disappointed. Did she forget about me? A girl's memory is generally not as good as a boy's. Chu Ho paused and said, "Besides, you've changed so much. How could anyone recognize you?" Gu Qingze didn't say anything. Clearly, he was still a little disappointed. Bai Sheng had been his goddess since he was young. In fact, many girls in the class liked Gu Qingze, but only Bai Sheng gave her the feeling of bathing in a cool breeze. He liked her and had liked her for years. Unexpectedly, she seemed to have forgotten about him. Gu Qingze said, "No matter what, she's my wife now. I'll take good care of her." Chu Ho sighed. "I have to digest it too." Digest what? Chapter 46-53. Gu Qingze was silent. "Okay, digest it well." With that, he hung up the phone. He really didn't know what to do with this mother. Gu Qingze was about to return to his work when his phone rang again. He frowned, stared at the screen, and picked up the call. "What's wrong? Are you done digesting the fact that you're going to be promoted to a mother-in-law?" There was silence on the other end for a while, then an aggressive voice came through. "Gu Qingze, right?" The tone was extremely arrogant, as if he wanted to eat someone alive. Gu Qingze was confused. He picked up the phone and looked at the screen again, only to find that it was an unknown number. "Why aren't you talking? Are you finally scared?" "Heh." Gu Qingze laughed. "Who is this?" "I'm asking you, is this Gu Qingze?" "Huh." The voice on the other end was especially arrogant, like a gangster. Gu Qingze confirmed again. "Who are you?" The call was quickly picked up, and Yi Yuqin's voice came through. "Qingze, right? Auntie?" Gu Qingze called out after Bai Ran. "Don't. I haven't acknowledged you as my niece-in-law yet." Yi Yuqin said arrogantly, "You want to acknowledge me as your relative? I haven't agreed to marry Bai Ran to you yet." "Then why are you calling me? Are you at work now?" "Yes." "Where's the company?" Gu Qingze gave the address almost without hesitation. Shenzhai Building. The elevator goes straight to the 25th floor. "Give my name and someone will bring you here." Gu Qingze gave his name almost without hesitation, which surprised Yi Yuqin. She originally thought that this guy would admit defeat when he heard that she was obviously looking for trouble. In the end, he gave the address so easily. Yi Yuqin was furious. Gu Qingze's taunt had no intention of giving a monetary gift. Yi Yuqin had already promised a few big bosses that she would introduce Bai Ran to them. How big could the so-called big bosses that Yi Yuqin was talking about be? Either they were people who got rich overnight, or they were people whose wives died of illness, or divorced men who remarried. They were not good-looking, but they were rich. On the other side, Yi Yuqin couldn't wait any longer. Hence, she found a hired thug from who knows where to find trouble with Gu Qingze. Although Gu Qingze was a natural airhead when he was young, he had grown up with Chu Ho and Gu Jinglian, so he still had this bit of awareness. From the phone call, he could vaguely tell that Yi Yuqin had brought people to cause trouble. However, it was not that he was not on guard, but that he was too lazy to be on guard. Xianxia was his territory. Would he be worried that someone would cause trouble in his own territory? Yi Yuqin probably treated him as an ordinary employee and wanted to cause trouble in his company. Half an hour later, Yi Yuqin really arrived with her people. She walked into the lobby with a burly man. Before she could protect herself, she was led to the floor where the CEO's office was located. When she finally saw Gu Qingze in the reception room, Yi Yuqin looked around and smiled coldly at Gu Qingze. "Huh, I couldn't tell that your workplace is decorated quite grandly." Gu Qingze sat on the sofa and smiled slightly as he gestured for them to sit. Chapter 46-54. My boss? Although in a sense, he was Shenzhai's boss, strictly speaking, he was only the CEO in name. Shenzhai still belonged to Gu Corporation, and the big boss of Gu Corporation was probably cultivating and practicing calligraphy in the Gu Mansion. "Why do you want him to see you?" "Ha. I have something to ask him." "What is it?" "I just want to ask if he can still keep his employee after doing such an immoral thing." "Immoral?" Gu Qingze was really curious and couldn't help but want to find out. He really wanted to know what kind of immorality Yi Yuqin was talking about. You're a marriage scam. Marriage scam? Gu Qingze's lips twitched. You don't have a house or a car. I don't know what kind of tricks you used to trick by you. Nowadays, which family doesn't give a cash gift to buy a house and a car? Gu Qingze touched his nose and said, I bought a house and a car, but I haven't seen any cash gifts. He thought of many things Yi Yuqin would say, but he did not expect to be accused of marriage scam. Why did he want to laugh when he heard that? Yi Yuqin continued, Gu Qingze, I advise you to be sensible and divorce by you quickly. Otherwise, if this matter gets out of hand, you won't be able to survive in this company. He was really not afraid. At the side, the assistant in charge of serving tea looked at Yi Yuqin coldly. What was wrong with her? Couldn't she speak properly? If she could coax Mr. Gu well, she would have nothing to worry about. Some people's horizons were really too narrow, so much so that Yi Yuqin didn't realize that the humble junior sitting in front of her was actually such a big shot. Gu Qingze smiled and nodded. Why should I divorce her? We just got married. Also, I didn't scam her into marriage. Where's the cash gift? Yi Yuqin was aggressive. I didn't even see the cash gift. This marriage doesn't count. Why isn't there a cash gift? Gu Qingze's words made Yi Yuqin raise her eyebrows suspiciously. However, he continued, I'll burn the cash gift for uncle and auntie when I have the chance. You don't have to worry about it. Or do you want it too? I don't mind burning you a little. Originally, since they were already married, he planned to pay his respects to her parents with Bai Hao after they officially met her parents. However, in Yi Yuqin's ears, it had a different meaning. When Yi Yuqin heard this, she was so angry that she trembled all over. This brat was clearly cursing him. Are you cursing me to die? Gu Qingze said innocently, I didn't. It's just that I've never heard that we should give gifts to our uncles and aunts when they get married. I've also never heard that it's customary to buy a house or a car for our uncle's son. Oh, could it be that I'm too outdated? His words were like pearls of wisdom, but they were all reasonable. Yi Yuqin stood up angrily. Gu Qingze, don't be so shameless. Let me tell you, although I'm Bai Yan's aunt, I'm her guardian. I'm the one who raised her. In ancient times, there was a saying about Yangzhou's thin horses. I wonder if such a thing still exists in the modern world. Chapter 46-55. Skinny horse was an insulting term for women. It meant that they could do whatever they wanted to women, just like how a slave would abuse a weak horse. Why was it called skinny horse? Because the middlemen who engaged in skinny horse breeding would buy young girls from poor families at a low price, raise them, and sell them at a high price. It was the same as how merchants bought skinny horses at a low price, fattened them up, and sold them at a high price. Hence, people called these women skinny horses. During the Ming and Qing dynasties, skinny horse breeding became a lucrative investment, and a large number of people specialized in this profession. They would first invest money to buy beautiful girls from poor families and train them. They would teach them singing and dancing, music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. After they grew up, they would sell them to the rich as concubines or enter brothels to make money. Because most poor girls were thin and weak, the name skinny horse came about. When they first bought a girl, it only cost them a dozen strings of coins. When they got married, they could earn up to 1,500 taels of silver. When the common people saw that there was profit to be made, they would compete to follow suit, and this became the norm. During the Ming dynasty, Yangzhou's salt merchants monopolized the salt transportation industry in the country, and they were rich. Hence, at that time, skinny horse breeding was the most popular trend in Yangzhou. And Yi Yuqin clearly saw the white horse as a skinny horse. Yi Yuqin did not understand the term skinny horse, but she could clearly see that Gu Qingze's expression had turned cold. I don't care what you're talking about. I'm just asking, are you getting a divorce or not? Divorce? Gu Qingze smiled. The Gu family has a tradition. Once you marry into the Gu family, there is no such thing as a divorce. Even if there is, it has nothing to do with other people. Unless Jean wants to divorce me, there is no such thing as a divorce. You. Yi Yuqin was so agitated that she stood up from the sofa. She pointed at Gu Qingze and said, "Must you make the situation so ugly? Make a scene?" Gu Qingze raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "May I ask, how do you want to make a scene?" Yi Yuqin could not hold back anymore. She turned around and said arrogantly to Gu Qingze, "Chow, I'll leave it to you." The burly man stood up and relaxed his shoulders. He tilted his head, and his neck made cracking sounds. His sharp gaze was clearly provocative. Gu Qingze caressed the 10,000 countries watch on his wrist and said casually, "Let me give you a piece of advice. Before you offend someone, you should consider if you have the ability to do so." Yi Yuqin snorted coldly. She pointed at Gu Qingze and said to Ah Chow, "What are you still standing there for?" Ah Chow walked towards him. Gu Qingze was still sitting on the chair nonchalantly. Seeing that he still did not seem to care, Chow guessed that Gu Qingze would not give up until he saw the coffin, so he raised his leg abruptly and was about to kick him. Seeing that his foot was about to land on Gu Qingze's face, the bodyguard beside him suddenly reached out and grabbed the man's calf with one hand. Ah Chow was completely caught off guard. He flew out and fell on the coffee table at his waist. He was in so much pain that he grimaced. Yi Yuqin shrunk her shoulders in fear and hid in the corner. Gu Qingze did not move at all. He did not even bother to lift his eyelids. He looked up and glanced at the man who had fallen onto the coffee table. The corners of his lips curled up indifferently. "Throw him out." "Yes, Mr. Gu." Yi Yuqin was stunned when she heard how the bodyguard addressed Gu Qingze. "Mr. Gu?" Why did this man call him Mr. Gu? Chapter 46-56. Before Yi Yuqin could react, the bodyguard grabbed a Chow's collar, opened the window, and pushed half of his body out of the window. It was such a tall building. Ah Chow saw from the corner of his eye that he was in the air. He was so frightened that he kept screaming. His body was stiff and he did not dare to move. Yi Yuqin was also stunned, but she did not dare to go closer. Her voice trembled as she said, You're killing someone. Killing someone. Oh. Gu Qingze raised his eyebrows disapprovingly. Who saw it? Yi Yuqin looked at Gu Qingze as he stood up slowly. Although the Gu family doesn't want to play dirty anymore, if someone comes knocking on my door, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Yi Yuqin said angrily, You're breaking the law. Isn't it illegal for you to hire a hitman? Gu Qingze smirked coldly. Moreover, you said that I killed someone. The whole building is mine. Who do you think will testify for you? When the time comes, even if the case is closed, the police can only conclude that the person fell by accident and it has nothing to do with the Gu family. At most, I'll burn some paper money for you out of humanitarianism. Consider it as accumulating some good karma. Yi Yuqin shrunk her shoulders in fear and did not dare to say anything else. As it turned out, this Gu Qingze's background was not that simple. Especially when she saw the terrifying aura around him, she believed that he would definitely do what he said. Don't mess around. The man held down by the bodyguard also started to beg for mercy. I was wrong, I know I was wrong. Let me down, it's too late. The bodyguard had just finished speaking when he sent him a little further out of the window. This time, except for his legs, most of his body was in the air. Ah Chow was so frightened that he almost peed his pants. He screamed and howled in fear, but he did not dare to kick his legs and struggle. If he was not careful, he was afraid that the bodyguard would not be able to hold him down and he would fall. Who's the one who won't cry until they see the coffin? Gu Qingze frowned and looked at Yi Yuqin. How have you treated Jean these past 10 years? I didn't cause you any trouble, but you came knocking on my door. Although Gu Qingze was adorably silly when he was young, after so many years of teaching by Gu Jinglian, he had inherited Gu Jinglian's imposing manner when he was angry. Yi Yuqin did not dare to speak at all. Her scalp was numb. Chow wrapped his fist in his palm and begged for mercy. Please. Put me down. I'll scram right away, I'll scram right away. I beg you. In the future, I will never find trouble with you again. The bodyguard turned to look at Gu Qingzi. However, Gu Qingzi said, if I put you down just like that, wouldn't they say that I'm just bluffing? No way. Impossible. I swear. I beg you, I don't want to die. Chow sounded like he was about to cry. Hearing this, Gu Qingzi snorted coldly. Put him down. The bodyguard then pulled the man back through the window and threw him on the ground. The moment he was thrown on the ground, he could no longer hold back his pee and his pants were wet. Gu Qingzi was disgusted when he saw this and said in a low voice, scram. Yes. Yes. I'll scram right away, I'll scram right away. Chow was so frightened that he crawled out on his knees. When Yuqin saw this, she wanted to leave too. She was about to walk to the door when the bodyguard blocked the door and there was no way out. Chapter 46-57. Yuqin's expression stiffened as she turned around, only to see Gu Qingzi standing behind her with an expressionless face and a cold smirk. Auntie, why do you want to leave? You didn't even say goodbye. Why, aren't you staying for lunch? No. There's no need. Yuqin was terrified. She did not know why, but even though Gu Qingzi was standing in front of her with a gentle smile, it gave her a creepy feeling. Some people were scarier when they smiled than when they didn't. Yuqin took half a step back and bumped into the bodyguard's chest. Gu Qingzi saw that she was terrified and slowly took half a step closer. Why, Auntie, are you trembling all over? You were still showing off when you saw me earlier, but now you look like I'm going to eat you up. Yuqin couldn't help but kneel down in front of him. She didn't even dare to look up at his expression. Little Gu, isn't this? Auntie doesn't understand the situation. I just want to give Bai Zhe a good home. I didn't know you were such a capable person. Bainian has suffered so much since she was young, so she's scared of being poor. Of course, my heart aches for her and I hope that she can have a better home. At least, the family background should be better, and the car and house should be standard. In my opinion, there must be some kind of misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Gu Qingzi raised his eyebrows and asked, what misunderstanding? Isn't this? I thought you were a scammer. Yuqin said, at that time, I thought you were like those men who use flowery words to trick girls. You don't have any ability, but you want to waste the girl's life. But now I see clearly that you are a capable man. Bainian won't suffer if she stays with you, haha. She laughed uneasily, but it looked worse than crying. Gu Qingzi glanced at her contemptuously. So, that's what you thought of me? A scam? No, that's not. That's not a misunderstanding. Yuqin frowned bitterly and said, Bairan didn't mention your situation to me, so I didn't know. It turns out that your family background is not bad. Since that's the case, I acquiesce in your marriage with Bairan. Her words were undoubtedly trying to please Gu Qingzi. However, Gu Qingzi sneered from the bottom of his heart and said disapprovingly, I never thought of getting your permission to marry Bairan. Although you are Bai Hao's legal guardian in name, don't think I don't know how you've treated him all these years. This debt can't be settled just like that. Yuqin shuddered and quickly explained, I treated Bai Hao well. Her parents died early when she was young, and my living conditions weren't good, but I still insisted on bringing her over to raise her. At that time, there was a couple who wanted to buy her for 50,000 yuan. They wanted to bring her home as their daughter. How could I not know that they wanted to bring her home as a child bride? I didn't want to. 50,000. At that time, I was sick and had to undergo surgery at home. I owed a lot of debts, but I didn't ask for the money from Wolfheart. Oh, really? Chapter 46-58. Gu Qingzi paused and continued, it's just that you didn't want to back then, but that was because you felt that 50,000 was too little. You wanted them to offer 100,000, but the price fell through and they weren't willing. You even pestered them for a while. At that time, someone secretly called the police, so they didn't take Bai Ran away in the end. Yi Yuqin was speechless. Bai Ran knew about these things? She was so young then. Yi Yuqin thought that she didn't know anything. Gu Qingze continued, don't tell me that you paid for Bai Ran's college education, heh? Bai Ran did the math, and she said that the money she worked to repay you had been paid off. Yi Yuqin sighed deeply and said despondently, this child, she really wronged me. I wanted her to pay back the money, but actually, I wasn't really helping her pay back. I just felt that when a girl grows up, she naturally has to be independent. I kept telling her not to rely on men too much and to learn to be independent and spend her own money. I wanted to train her to be independent. If that's the case, why did you keep matchmaking her with rich but old men? Gu Qingze's words were like pearls. Yi Yuqin didn't know how to answer. She was stunned for a long time before she tried to defend herself. I don't think so anymore. What's the use of being independent? Marrying a good husband is the most important thing. Look at me, I've always been earning money to support my family, but with a husband like that, I've been busy for most of my life and didn't have any savings. Now that my son is getting married, I can't even find a wife. My family is so poor. Women can't be compared to men. Having a man to support the family is better than anything else. So, you specially picked some nouveau riche men for her? Even if they are all divorced and widowed. I've tested my character first. Yi Yuqin said righteously. Although they are widowed, they are good people and will treat Bai Ran like a treasure. Heh. The more Gu Qingze listened, the more he wanted to laugh. Bai Ran's aunt was not very cultured, but when she started to quibble, she came up with one thing after another. Gu Qingze glared at Yi Yuqin in disgust and suddenly lost his patience. When are you going to stop quibbling? Yi Yuqin shuddered from his cold tone and knelt on the ground, trembling. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If you think that it's my fault, then I can't defend myself. Xiao Gu, there are times when people's minds. I admit that I was muddle-headed. Being muddle-headed is being muddle-headed because of concern. I love Bai Hua so much that I treat her like my own daughter and dote on her. However, you can't blame me for doing something bad with good intentions. Gu Qingze clenched his fists. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have a habit of hitting women, he would have kicked her out of the door. However, just because he didn't make a move, it didn't mean that he couldn't make others move. Gu Qingze turned around and glanced at the female assistant. He said to her, teach this spouting woman a lesson. He ran, he left, Yi Yuqin also wanted to leave. Just as she was about to stand up, the female assistant walked over and grabbed her hair. She pulled her back into the room and slapped her, causing Yi Yuqin to fall to the ground. Slap. The female assistant slapped her again without hesitation. Chapter 46-59. Gu Qingze did not stop. As he walked further and further away, the sounds behind him became more and more miserable. However, in such a building, no one would care. This was his Gu Corporation. When Gu Qingze returned home, Bai Ran was asleep on the sofa. She was still holding a book in her hands. It was obvious that she had fallen asleep while reading it. The man walked over, picked up the book, and put it aside. Bai Ran was startled by his footsteps. She immediately sat up from the sofa and rubbed her sleepy eyes. You're back. Yeah. It's already so late. Only then did Bai Ran react. She was no longer sleepy. She stood up and looked out the window. The sky was still bright. Gu Qingze was already sitting on the sofa. He held her hand and pulled her into his arms. I came back early today. Bai Ran fell into his arms. She was caught off guard. He rarely touched her on his own initiative. After being married for so long, he had followed the gentleman's agreement before marriage. When he said that he would not touch her, he really did not touch her. He did not force her to do anything. However, this time, he took the initiative to hug her. Bai Ran did not feel any repulsion. In fact, she could not help but blush and her heart beat faster. Bai Ran felt that the two of them were too close. She was a little shy and could not help but change the topic. Are you back so early because the company is not busy? I missed you, Gu Qingze said softly. I missed you, so I wanted to come back early to accompany you. He rarely said such romantic words. Bai Ran's heart beat even faster. Actually, she could not stand such mushy words of love. However, she did not know why such superficial words sounded so pleasant when they came out of his mouth. Bai Ran froze in his arms. She did not dare to move. Seeing her body so stiff, Gu Qingze knew that she was nervous. He laughed and said, "Why are you so nervous?" She could not say that this was the first time she had been so intimate with someone of the opposite sex since elementary school, right? She was too embarrassed to say it. She pursed her lips and could not say anything. Gu Qingze did not need her to say anything. Now, he just wanted to hug her. When he thought of how Yi Yuqin had treated him, his heart ached even more for her. He wanted to make up for her absence in the past 10 years. After so many years, it seemed that no one had doted on her. There was only scheming. If only I had met you earlier. If he could meet her in university and have a sweet relationship with her, it would be about time for him to get married after graduation. Perhaps, at this age, he and she would already have a cute child and a warm and happy family of 3. However, although fate was late, love was not. Gu Qingze was a very stubborn person. He believed in love, and at the same time, he was a very nostalgic person. Bai Yu was the first girl who made his heart move. At that time, they were still young and didn't know much about relationships. They were just pure childhood sweethearts. However, as time passed, he missed her even more. Perhaps, he had already forgotten her silhouette. If not for the fact that he kept her photo, he would take it out from time to time to look at it when he missed her. However, he could never forget this name. Chapter 4660. Gu Qingze looked at her carefully. She lowered her eyelids. She was obviously a little shy and did not dare to look into his eyes. After being married for so long, it seemed that he rarely got so close to her. Actually, Bai Xing could see that Gu Qingze was restraining himself. Especially when he stood at the door of her room every time, he seemed to want to say something but hesitated. He probably felt that it was not appropriate for them to sleep in separate rooms since they were already husband and wife. In terms of feelings and nurturing feelings, if the two of them were lukewarm, it would be difficult to make any progress. Bai Xing did not reject being a little closer to him, but Gu Qingze was too gentlemanly. As a girl, she could not be too proactive. However, Gu Qingze stayed by her side and did not touch anything. It was as if they were in a platonic marriage. She knew that there was a limit to a man's tolerance. He had been holding it in. At first, she was uneasy, nervous, and then scared. In the end, she started to feel embarrassed. Qingze, don't speak. Gu Qingze used a finger to stop her from saying anything. Bai Xing widened her eyes in confusion and her heart started to beat faster. I want to kiss you. Bai Xing was so scared that she fell silent. Gu Qingze got closer and closer. At first, she was a little resistant, but Gu Qingze did not allow her to reject him. He grabbed her wrist and said, "This time, you're not allowed to reject me." This was clearly the first time he had kissed her. However, Bai Xing was too embarrassed to reject him. It had to be said that this was Gu Qingze's black-bellied side. He had endured for so long. He had clearly coveted her for a long time, but he endured it and did not touch her. His restraint and control, except for not wanting to force her, not wanting to scare her, and not wanting to fail at the last step. In the end, he had become a first-class gentleman and lived under the same roof with the person he yearned for, but he did not cross the line at all. In the end, Bai Xing was the one who felt a little guilty and embarrassed. This way, when he started to take the initiative, she would not have the nerve to reject him. He admitted that such a method seemed a little despicable. He had said that he would wait until she was willing, but if the woman really agreed, with Bai Xing's introverted personality, she would probably never agree. A woman's greatest reservedness was to not admit it even though she had the same desire in her heart. Thousands of years of tradition had taught women to be reserved and even conservative. As a man, he had to be more proactive. Gu Qingze pinned her down and in the next second, he kissed her without restraint. At that moment, when their lips touched, her mind was in a mess. She seemed to have subconsciously accepted him, but what was the reason for that? Was it love? Was love so easy to fall in love with? Responsibility? She didn't think she was that responsible. That was, repay him? To repay his kindness? He saved her from the abyss of suffering and gave her a warm home. With this thought in mind, she didn't resist him that much. Bai Xing did not understand. For as long as she could remember, she didn't seem to have any close friends of the opposite sex. She had an inferiority complex and was antisocial. She always felt that she couldn't repay the kindness of others. Gu Qingze had treated her well, and she wanted to repay him with more. Bai Xing's thoughts ran wild as he clumsily accepted her kiss. Chapter 46-61. It was also Gu Qingze's first time kissing. Bai Ran was his first woman. He had no experience in dating. Chu Ho had always hated him for not being enlightened in this aspect. He had brought home so many girlfriends his age, but he did not do anything. If he was not her biological son, she would really suspect that something had gone wrong. If Gu Qingze had not patted his chest and assured her of his sexual orientation, she would have really thought that her son liked men. Therefore, although the two of them were kissing, it was not an exaggeration to say that they were fighting. Their teeth collided, as if they were sharpening their knives. Bai Ran could not help but push him away and asked in a questioning tone, "Are you biting me, or kissing me?" Towards the end, she could not help but become even more shy. She lowered her head and mumbled a few words. Gu Qingze said, "It's my first time kissing." "What about you?" "I don't believe it's your first time kissing." Bai Ran thought that he was lying to her. He was so handsome and had such a good personality. Even if he did not chase girls, there should be many girls chasing after him. How could he not have a girlfriend? When Gu Qingze heard this, his lips curled into a smile. "I never lie. But it's really my first time kissing." "You've never been in love?" Bai Ran looked as if she had discovered a new continent. No, Gu Qingze felt a little guilty. He really did not have a girlfriend, but why did Bai Ran look like she did not believe him? He quickly explained, "My sexual orientation is normal." Pfft. Bai Ran could not help but be angry. Who asked if your sexual orientation is normal? Why do you sound like you're trying to hide something by saying this? Because even my biological mother asked me this suspiciously. As Gu Qingze said this, he sat at the side angrily. He recalled how he had summoned him back to the Gu family and interrogated him like he was a criminal. He did not know who she had heard from, but she was now questioning him like he was a criminal. Bai Ran heard this and did not believe it. How is that possible? Your mother. Pfft, is she so avant-garde? She could not help but laugh again. Gu Qingze was also extremely helpless. You ruined the atmosphere. Just now, the atmosphere was so good. It was fine if she pushed him away, but she actually disrupted such a good atmosphere. Bai Ran felt wronged. You just hit my gums. Oh, you're so stupid, you don't even know how to kiss. Could it be that your kissing skills are better than mine? Without a doubt, he was being sarcastic. Bai Ran blushed as well. Her kissing skills weren't any better. Just now, there were a few times when she bit his tongue because she was nervous, but he didn't say anything. Why did it feel like she was making a big deal out of nothing? It's all right. Gu Qingze hugged her waist and pulled her into his arms. Let's start over. Things like chemistry can be cultivated slowly. Kissing was a tacit understanding between two people. He didn't mind getting along well with her. Bai Yu nervously pressed her lips against his again. Is it just a kiss? Otherwise? Gu Qing's gaze was so gentle that she was about to drown in it. What else do you want? No, are you ready? Gu Qing's suddenly pressed her down on the sofa and gently stroked her hair with his long fingers. After all, we're already married. It's time to fulfill the obligations of a husband and wife. Chapter 46-62. Halfway through her sentence, Byran felt a little guilty. He had given her so much time. Moreover, they were married. Even if they took it a step further, it was perfectly justifiable. His request was not too much. Yi Yuqin even said that Gu Qingzhou was cheating her into marriage. No matter how she looked at it now, she was the one who was cheating. She was a professional at cheating others into marriage. At the very least, she would give the man some sweetness. However, she could not even touch it. Moreover, she was not a child anymore. Even if it went that far, so what? When Byran thought of this, she immediately put on a heroic look. She carefully separated her hands and gently held her shoulders like a shy rose waiting to bloom. She blushed and said softly, "If you really want, then, can you go back to the room first?" Her voice became softer and softer. She wanted to bury her smiling face in his chest and did not dare to look up at him. Gu Qingzhou was stunned and did not know whether to laugh or cry. No matter how he looked at it, she looked like a female slave who sacrificed herself to the male lead in order to repay a debt of gratitude. However, what he wanted was not to repay a debt of gratitude. He knew that this little girl was extremely simple-minded. If others treated her well, she would only treat them better. She probably felt that she could not repay him with anything, so she would not be stingy with anything she could give. She was clearly so scared. "Don't think too much." Gu Qingzhou gently scratched her nose. "Why are you so scared?" "I won't eat you. I kissed you today because I couldn't help it. Unless you're willing, I won't force you to do anything you don't want to." Byran looked up in surprise. Even at this moment, this man was still indulging her? How could she not feel that a certain part of the man was ready to explode? However, he could still hold it in and was willing to hold it in. Since she was young, no one had ever doted on her like this. Gu Qingzhou was about to get up when Byran suddenly hugged his shoulders. His body sank down again. The two of them were extremely compatible. I'm willing." Bai Hao was timid as he struggled to say those words. Gu Qingzhou looked at her. She also opened her eyes. Her eyes were clear and bright. I don't think I'm forcing myself. It's just that I haven't experienced it before, so I'm a little nervous. I'm willing. I'm not forcing myself. For someone as thin-skinned as her, such words were undoubtedly a warm invitation. As if she was afraid that Gu Qingzhou would not believe her, she reached out with trembling hands, grabbed his collar, and started to unbutton his shirt bit by bit. Her movements were a little clumsy. At first, she slipped on the first button because her fingertips were sweaty. She bit her lip and patiently comforted herself that this was just the most common process between husband and wife. Sooner or later, she would have to get used to it. After all, from the beginning of their marriage, her plan was to work hard to be with this man until the end. Since they had never thought of getting a divorce, they would have to go through the normal process of being a married couple sooner or later, wouldn't they? Bai Qian was halfway through when Gu Qingzhou suddenly grabbed her hand. His eyes were filled with forbearance and doubt. "You really won't force it?" Bai Kun shook his head. "No." Chapter 46-63. Gu Qingzhou hugged her and carried her into his bedroom. All this time, the two of them had been sleeping separately. He slept in his room, and she slept in the other room. All this time, she had never stepped into his room. This seemed to be the first time she had entered his room. It was a huge room with a bed and a wardrobe. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows was a balcony that served as a bustling night market. The next second, she was thrown onto the bed. His bed was extremely soft. Her body bounced slightly, and the next second, he was on top of her. Everything started with instinct. Her body felt like it was filled with magma. It was boiling hot and almost burned her. After having her once, he finally stopped. When she woke up again, it was already dawn. She did not sleep very well. For the first time, she could only feel pain. Although he was very gentle, the pillow was still wet. Oh no, she still had to go to work tomorrow. Byran opened her tired eyes. She did not have any extra energy to think about tomorrow. In the morning, at 10 o'clock, Byran's phone rang crazily. Gu Qingze was the first to wake up. He muted the ringtone and saw that the caller ID was Team Leader. He thought that it was her boss calling. Oh right, how could he forget that she had to go to work today? Did he go too far yesterday? She was still buried in his arms, sleeping soundly. Gu Qingze picked up the call. On the other end, a woman's angry voice could be heard. It's 10 o'clock, Byran. Are you still planning to come to work? Give me an explanation. Sorry, Byran is sick today and can't go to work. There's a reason for this, so I didn't ask for leave. I'm very sorry. On the other end, the woman was stunned. She asked blankly, I'm Byran's husband. Oh. Byran is sick. Yes. Then why didn't you ask for leave in advance? Gu Qingze laughed. Excuse me, who can predict that they will fall sick? Byran wanted to go to work today, but I stopped her. She has a high fever, so she can't go. Oh. I want to ask for leave for her. How many days? A week. A week? What fever would take a week? If you take a week off, it won't count as full attendance. You can take a day off at most. Moreover, if you don't pass the approval of the leaders, your salary will be deducted. Deduct as much as you like. If he wasn't feeling well, he couldn't force himself to go to work. Is your company a vampire? As he spoke, Gu Qingze did not give her any face and hung up the phone. On the phone, there were many alarms. The alarm went off, but neither of them woke up. Gu Qingze hung up the phone and put it under the pillow. He hugged her and went back to sleep. In the afternoon, Bai Hao slowly woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, he felt a tearing pain in his thigh. Although it didn't feel like being run over by a heavy truck, it was still a tearing pain. With just a slight movement, his nerves felt as if they were sealed by cement, sore and swollen. Byran grimaced in pain. Suddenly, he thought of something and immediately fumbled for his phone under the pillow. When he reached for his phone, he realized that the screen was black. Out of power? She pressed the power button suspiciously, and the phone lit up. However, when it finally turned on, she looked at the time and felt uncomfortable. Chapter 46-64. Without realizing it, she had already slept so late. Byran was annoyed. She saw that there were many messages on WeChat and clicked on them. Then, she saw a dialogue box from her team leader. Byran, are you doing this on purpose? You didn't ask for leave, so you let an outsider do it. Your husband's leave doesn't count. Today, I'll treat it as absenteeism. Please come to work on time tomorrow. Otherwise, I'll treat it as absenteeism. Byran's lips twitched. She clicked on recent calls. There was a call record, but it was obvious that she did not pick it up. It was him. Byran looked at Gu Qingze resentfully. He was sleeping quietly and had not woken up yet. How could he sleep better than her? With the intention of teasing him, Bai Yan gently poked his cheek with his finger. The latter frowned and raised his hand to hold her finger. He opened his eyes and looked at her with his slightly misty eyes. Byran did not expect him to wake up so quickly. She turned her face away awkwardly and hugged the blanket tightly. The scene from yesterday appeared in front of her eyes again. She and this man, they were husband and wife. She patted her forehead in annoyance and her face heated up. Gu Qingze sat up from the bed and hugged her gently from behind. He rested his chin on her shoulder and hugged her tightly. You're awake? Byran only responded with an He liked her soft voice and could not help but lean closer to her. The scorching heat from his chest made her blush again. Byran lowered her head even more. She hugged the blanket tightly, but before she could say anything, her stomach made a grumble sound. Growl. Gu Qingze looked up and became more awake. Are you hungry? What do you want to eat? Anything. There are still some eggs and bread at home. After a pause, Gu Qingze asked, I'll cook a poached egg for you, Although she was shy to face him, she still mustered up the courage to ask, do you know how to make sweets? The kind that's soft and fluffy? Yes. Gu Qingze kissed her earlobe. I'll make them for you. With that, he got off the bed. Bai Yu immediately covered his eyes in embarrassment. He didn't even dare to look at him naked. Gu Qingze looked at her bashful expression as he tied the belt of his nightgown. He could not help but chuckle, but it was because he doted on her. All right, I'm dressed. Bai Kun put his hands down, but he did not know where to place them. He could only lower his head and make a sound of acknowledgement. The redness on his face had already spread to the base of his neck. Gu Qingze entered the kitchen. Even though he was quite a distance away from the kitchen, when she heard the sound of the kitchen hood being turned on, she could imagine Gu Qingze in a bathrobe cooking elegantly in the kitchen. Her heart was filled with warmth. However, what exactly did he say to the team leader that made her so angry? The team leader was already going through menopause. He also knew that he had said something that had angered her. He felt that she would definitely be severely criticized when she went to work. It's done. Half an hour later, Gu Qingze personally brought the poached eggs in. How could he not understand her embarrassment? His legs must be so sore. He set up the table on the bed and placed the bowl and chopsticks in front of her. Chapter 46-65. Stop messing around. Get out of bed and walk around. Just eat on the bed. Bai Yan was even more embarrassed. Somehow, she felt that there was a hint of playfulness in his tone, as if he had seen through some of her embarrassment. Could it be that this man knew that her legs were sore and swollen, so he didn't want her to get out of bed? What's wrong? Gu Qingze sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her. Why aren't you eating? Aren't you hungry? Bai Yan was a little confused. You should eat something too. No hurry. I'll eat when you're full. There was a hidden meaning in his words. But Bai Yan obviously didn't understand. In front of Gu Qingze, the big bad wolf, she was like an ignorant little white rabbit. She silently grabbed the chopsticks, grabbed the bread, dipped it in some jam, and took a bite. The soft bread paired with the sweet jam was delicious. She was so happy that she felt like she was going to melt. His cooking was so good that he could bake the bread to such a good texture. Is it good? Yeah. As Bai Yan ate, she felt his gaze on her from beginning to end. She shrunk her shoulders awkwardly. Today, she hesitated, not knowing if she should ask. Yeah? What's wrong? Team leader called me this morning. Were you the one who answered? Yeah. How did you answer her? What's wrong? Gu Qingze said, I forgot too. She seemed very angry. Gu Qingze frowned and replied, I said you were sick and needed to take a week off. She said that the company doesn't have such a long sick leave. Then you got angry at her? Angry? Gu Qingze touched his chin and said honestly, I didn't get angry, right? Why? Did she scold you? Bai Yan silently raised her phone and showed him the WeChat message that team leader had sent her. Gu Qingze took the phone and glanced at it. Team leader's message, Bai Yan, did you do it on purpose? You didn't ask for leave, so you let an outsider do it. Your husband's leave doesn't count. Today, you'll be punished as absenteeism. Please come to work on time tomorrow. Otherwise, you'll be punished as absenteeism. Absenteeism? Gu Qingze smiled. Sure, it's best if you fire her directly. Hey. Bai Yu looked at him reproachfully. It's not easy to find a job now. You can't wait for me to be fired. However, Gu Qingze put his arm around her shoulder and said confidently, when you're fired, I'll have a reason to support you. Bai Yu blushed, but he was unwilling. I don't want you to raise me. Girls should be independent and not rely on men to support them. Do you often read chicken soup articles on WeChat? Huh. For example, men are unreliable. Women only have a few years of youth, and they should be used to fight and struggle. Youth alone can't tie down a man's heart. When a person's pearls turn yellow, they will have no value. In the end, women who rely on men for a living will be eliminated by society. How did he know? She had indeed read such chicken soup stories before. Gu Qingze raised his brows unhappily. What? Do you think I'm that kind of scumbag in the chicken soup novel? No. Or, are you completely insecure? Sense of security, Bai Yan nodded hesitantly. She really didn't feel safe. He always felt that he was the only one who could be relied on. Chapter 46-66. If I remember correctly, you work at a design company. Yes. What's the nature of your job? Designing wedding dresses. Only wedding dresses? Yes. Bai Ran nodded silently. We work with wedding dress factories in many cities. Their wedding dresses are all from our designs. Actually, we call it a company, but it's more like a studio. She sighed and said, actually, my dream doesn't only involve the wedding dress. I want to be an outstanding fashion designer, not just designing wedding dresses. It was not that it was too boring, but she felt that her talent was useless. Bai Ran was a girl with low self-esteem and a little pride. And her design talent was what she was proud of. At that time, if she did not have a family background, she could have studied in France and studied design. However, Yi Yuqin would definitely not agree, so she had to give up this opportunity. Gu Qingze said, why don't you consider quitting? That company won't give you much room to develop. But, Bai Ran said in distress, it's not easy to find a job now. Don't you still have me to support you after you leave that job? You can't support me forever. If I can, I'm willing. But you won't be willing to be supported by me forever, right? Gu Qingze said as he hugged her tightly. Why don't you register a company and set up a personal studio? This way, you can plan your own career and won't be bound. It's not that easy to set up a studio. Bai Ran sighed. To be honest, I don't even know how to resign. The company won't let me go because my design skills are the backbone of the company. They won't fire me. Then you should resign. If I mention my resignation, the boss will probably cry and throw a tantrum. Although it was not easy to find a job now, Bai Ran's excellent design skills made the boss have high hopes for her. In short, she was the entire company's cash cow. The company had signed many contracts because of her. If she left, who would do the design drafts of those contracts? Bai Ran frowned and said, let me think about it. Gu Qingze looked at her troubled expression and suddenly said, the thing that's stopping you is not the company, but your indecisive personality. Bai Hao was bewildered. Gu Qingze paused and said, actually, I understand how you feel. You yearn for the feeling of being needed. In this company, you feel that you are needed. If you resign, you will feel guilty, as if you are a traitor who has betrayed the company. Yes. These words completely reflected her inner thoughts. Bai Yan said, I don't want to be a traitor. Either you become a traitor to your company, or you become a traitor to your life. You also said that a woman's youth is only a few years. Instead of putting your own structure in such a small company, you might as well step out. Or, if you want to study abroad, I can accompany you. What about your job? Bai Ran looked at him tentatively. Don't you want to work? Moreover, it costs a lot to study abroad. You just bought a house. Gu Qingze laughed helplessly. Jean, do you really think that the husband you married is as poor as your aunt said? Bai Ran was stunned. It wasn't just because Gu Qingze called him Ran, but because. Chapter 46-67. I'm a little richer than you think. Gu Qingze's words surprised Bai Yan. She couldn't help but sneak over and ask, how rich is a little rich? You can afford to raise 70 or 80 of them. Hiss, Bai Yan was shocked. Is it that cheap to raise me? Idiot. Gu Qingze knocked her head. Even if you buy Gucci and Armani every day, I can still afford to raise you. So he was very rich? Bai Yayan suddenly laughed secretly. Gu Qingze saw that she was laughing secretly and hugged her tightly. What are you laughing about? Nothing. Tell me. You must be laughing about something. Me, Bai Yayan pursed her lips and said, I'm laughing. At least I don't have to worry about starvation when I'm with you. Why are you so useless? To be honest, Bai Yayan suddenly sat up and looked at him seriously. When I married you back then, I was really prepared to starvation with you. Gu Qingze didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Did he really give people the impression that he was so poor? When he first met her, he was dressed very well. Did he not have the manners of a noble at all? Bai Yayan seemed to know what he was thinking and quickly explained, I'm not saying that you're poor in clothes. You're poor in temperament. Then what's poor in temperament? I just thought about it and felt that rich people would choose women of equal social status to be their wives. If you're really rich, why did you fall in love with me and marry me in a flash? Gu Qingze heard this and pursed his lips, but he didn't say anything. She felt too inferior. Even when she was with him, she was always careful not because she was afraid of making him unhappy, but because she was afraid that he wouldn't like her. He knew what she had been through since she was young, so it was normal for her to have such an attitude. However, he hoped that when she married him, she would slowly become more confident and brave. Gu Qingze suddenly thought of something. He looked at her and suddenly walked out. Bai Hao saw him leave without saying anything. He craned his neck to check, his face bewildered. Hubby, what are you doing? Gu Qingze went straight to her room and opened the wardrobe. Other than the few pieces of clothing he had bought for her, her own clothes were all simple and plain. He had bought it for her, but she couldn't bear to wear it. Fortunately, she had a good temperament. She was able to wear the cheap plastic clothes that were sold at street stalls to give off a high-class feeling. These clothes were too mediocre and cheap. His heart ached so much that he decided to take her to the mall in the afternoon to shop crazily. When Gu Qingze returned to the room, Bai Ran was holding a bowl and staring at him blankly. She was still biting the poached egg in her mouth. What happened? I'm done. Let's go out in the afternoon. Going out? Bai Ran thought for a while, didn't you ask for leave? You don't have to send me to work this afternoon. It's not work. Hey, what's that? An hour later. Gu Qingze brought Bai Ran into the resplendent shopping mall. The first floor was luxuriously decorated, especially the jewels and jade. They almost blinded her eyes. Before she could react, Gu Qingze led her all the way up to the fourth floor. Chapter 46-68. Jinbai International Department Store. It was one of the businesses acquired by the Gu Corporation. This was originally a non-performing asset. Because of poor management, they could not even get back the rent. After the Gu Corporation acquired it, they spent a lot of money to renovate it. After the renovation, Jinbai International became a high-end shopping mall. Bai Xing never dared to step into this place. Because the things inside were super expensive. Bai Xing had come in by chance once because a fashion brand she liked had moved in. In the end, when she saw the price tag, she was shocked. 500,000 yuan. The price of a Mercedes-Benz. It was too exaggerated. Although this was a high-end boutique, a fashion show, and a supermodel, it should not be so expensive. For a moment, Bai Xing felt an inexplicable sense of respect for Jinbai International. She thought that she probably wouldn't step into the counter here in her lifetime. Hello, welcome. The Chanel store assistant greeted her respectfully. Bai Xing suddenly felt like she was surrounded by a group of devout believers. These store assistants all had exquisite makeup on. How could they be so beautiful? Bai Xing looked around silently, feeling a little restrained. Madam, shall we choose a few clothes for you? You have such a good figure. You'll look good in anything. The store assistants' mouths were as sweet as honey. Bai Xing shook her head and looked at Gu Qingze beside her. Gu Qingze curled his lips and said calmly, go and choose what you like. On the way here, Gu Qingze repeatedly explained to her that even if she spent every day at Jianghu International, shopped all over Gucci and Givenchy, and bought all the high-end boutiques from Chanel, she would not make him poor. She still did not quite believe it. This was too ridiculous. If he was so rich, why did he still live in such a simple apartment? It was not that she had any prejudice against the people who lived in the apartment. When they got married, Gu Qingze did not care about her family background, and she naturally did not care about his identity and background. The two of them were extremely pure. She even thought that he was just an ordinary employee. As for married life, it was best to be able to live a peaceful and happy life. However, until one day, the ordinary husband in her eyes suddenly became a rich young master. This world was too fantastical. "Madam, do you need us to choose for you?" The store assistant was still asking eagerly. She smiled and said, "No need, thank you. I'll pick it myself." She was a designer, and no designer knew how to match clothes better than her. Bai Xing walked to the rows of wardrobes. He liked the style of these clothes very much. She saw a goose yellow woolen coat. The style was not bad, and the pattern was the one she liked. Most importantly, she knew what style of clothes suited her best. Therefore, she pointed at the coat and said to the shop assistant, "I want to try this on." "Can I?" "Of course." "Wait a moment, we'll get it for you." The shop assistant immediately instructed the assistant to carefully remove the clothes. He muttered in his heart, "Evil rich people." The truly rich people didn't go in and out of Jianghu International 7 times a week. Instead, they went into the counter and never looked at the price tag. Actually, they had misunderstood Bai Xing. It wasn't that she didn't want to look, but she didn't know where to look. It wasn't until she took the clothes and entered the fitting room that she saw the price tag that she gasped. Chapter 46-69. Bai Ran thought that the clothes would be expensive, but she didn't expect it to be so expensive. Moreover, she knew that the really expensive clothes wouldn't have a price tag. Usually, there would be limited edition clothes in the store. The more expensive the clothes, the less they would have a price tag. Because there was no price tag, the highest bidder would get it. Bai Ran stuck out her tongue. Since Gu Qingze dared to bring her here, it meant that the price was within his expectations. Actually, Bai Ran wasn't picky about what she wore. However, since Gu Qingze had threatened and tempted her to buy clothes, she might as well try it on. After Bai Ran tried on the clothes, she walked out and walked in front of Gu Qingze. She showed it to him. "How is it?" After Gu Qingze's gaze fell on her, he couldn't look away. It was beautiful. So beautiful that he couldn't look away. He saw the clothes the moment he walked in, but it wasn't so beautiful that it stunned him. It was just a feeling. The quality was good, and it had a sense of design. That was all. However, when she wore it, it was so beautiful that it stood out. This was probably the so-called human shirt, right? She looked especially good in it, but it wasn't to the extent that the clothes completely stole her attention. Some clothes were really beautiful. They were so beautiful that ordinary people only noticed the color and style of the clothes at first glance. They often ignored the person's appearance. The person's limelight was completely overshadowed by the clothes. This was why some people said that some people couldn't hold up to this kind of clothes. This was also why the clothes worn by some supermodels were so beautiful, but when they wore them, they either didn't look good or completely stole the attention. Bai Ran wasn't very tall. At least, she wasn't as tall as a supermodel. However, this style made her look slender and graceful. Most importantly, her body proportions were better. A 9-headed body, the golden ratio. Let's look at other styles. Gu Qingze suddenly blurted out this sentence. Bai Ran was a little disappointed. Is it because I don't look good in this? How can that be? Gu Qingze smiled. You're a designer. You know how to match. The clothes you match will definitely look good. I'm just showing you something else. What about this one? Pack it up. Pack, Bai Ran was very curious. Why didn't he ask about the price? 99999. Close to 100,000 yuan for a piece. Poverty really limited her imagination. Bai Yu looked around again and picked out 2 dresses from Little Fragrance Breeze. She took them to the fitting room. In the end, under Gu Qing's instigation and connivance, Bai Ran was also blinded by greed. He chopped off his hands and squandered his money in various ways. When they reached the 5th floor, Bai Ran thought that she wouldn't be interested in branded bags like Hermes, Louis Vuitton, or Gucci. It was only when she touched the real bag that she realized how much she had. What? Nothing. No. It turned out that Bao Bao could cure all kinds of diseases for women. Especially for a designer like Bai Ran, he liked beautiful things at first sight. This was especially true for Gucci's Dionysus series. Usually, when people saw pictures of the bags, they would only feel that the bags were too gaudy and did not have any aesthetic appeal. Chapter 4670. At first, when the shop assistant took the bag out, she was a little afraid to touch it because she saw how careful the shop assistant was when taking the bag out. Before taking it out, the shop assistant even put on a pair of cotton gloves. It was such a grand ceremony. She didn't dare to touch it. How expensive was this bag? Bai Ran didn't dare to touch it at first. She looked at Gu Qingzi and muttered in her heart. This was her first time in a luxury store, so she didn't know about this. Did she have to buy this bag just because she touched it? She wasn't going to buy it, so she could only look at it. Gu Qingzi understood her embarrassment and picked up the bag himself. He handed it to her and said, "Carry it." Okay. Bai Ran carefully took the bag and carried it on her body. Suddenly, she felt as if she was carrying a mountain of gold and silver. She walked to the mirror and looked at it for a while. Then, she hurriedly took the bag off. Gu Qingzi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What's wrong? You don't like it? It's not that, Bai Ran winked at him. Seeing Gu Qingzi's confused expression, she walked over, took his hand, and walked to the side. How much does this bag cost? It should be a few thousand yuan, right? Gu Qingzi thought about it. He remembered that last year, when he accompanied Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho to Jinbai International, he also bought a wine god bag. It seemed that it also cost 10 to 20,000 yuan. A few thousand yuan was not enough to buy it. However, in his mind, a few thousand was equivalent to tens of thousands. It seemed to be more or less the same. Thus, Gu Qingzi nodded. More or less. It's so expensive, however, she wasn't that surprised to know that a bag cost a few thousand yuan. Perhaps it was because she had the Chanel clothes that cost tens of thousands, so when she saw a Gucci bag that cost a few thousand yuan, she felt that it wasn't too expensive. Although it was beyond her spending range, but it was still cheaper than the clothes that cost tens of thousands. Bai Ran patted her chest. No wonder the shop assistant had to wear gloves when they passed the bag to her. Maybe it was because the quality wasn't good? Suddenly, many guesses appeared in her mind. Just as Bai Ran was thinking about it, Gu Qingzi had already taken the bag that she had taken a fancy to. When the shop assistant was checking the bag for Gu Qingzi, Bai Ran walked over and was shocked. You bought it? Yes. This. I didn't say I wanted it. I think you look good with it on your back. Gu Qingzi smiled. It's not expensive anyway. Only 15,000. It was indeed not expensive. Bai Hao nodded in a daze. He glanced at the other bag and was deeply attracted by it. A pink bamboo bag from Gucci was placed in the most eye-catching position. Because she especially liked pink, she couldn't help but take a few more glances. Gu Qingzi noticed that she was staring at the bag, so he said to the salesperson, "Swipe the credit card for that bag too." Ah. Bai Sheng was nervous for a moment. He tugged at his sleeve and said worriedly, "What are you doing?" "I didn't say I wanted it." Gu Qingzi said righteously, "But you like it." Bai Sheng looked defeated. "I didn't say I liked it. Why do you keep staring at it if you don't like it?" As he spoke, Gu Qingzi pinched her nose affectionately. Your eyes have already betrayed you. Chapter 46-71. Bai Xing didn't say anything. She didn't dare to let her gaze wander around. She didn't want this man to buy it again if she saw any bag. Gu Qingze looked at her and found it funny. This girl had probably lived a hard life and was afraid of being poor. He saw that she was clearly interested in the bag, but she only looked at it and did not even dare to touch it. Did he have to buy it just because she touched it? He didn't buy it because he saw her touch it. What really made him decide to buy it was the longing and love in her eyes. He knew that she wouldn't have the nerve to ask him to buy a bag. After all, this bag was not cheap. She was so sensible and considerate. She would not be willing to part with it. However, he was willing to part with it. 1 bag, 2 bags, were only tens of thousands of dollars. Even $1,000 could not buy her happiness. This was not to make up for anything. Instead, he was using limited money to buy something she liked. The value of this was not something that could be measured by tens of thousands of dollars. If he was short of money, he might have some reservations about buying a bag. However, Gu Qingze was not short of money. Not to mention a few bags, he would buy dozens or hundreds of them. As long as she was happy. When Gu Qingze held Bai Xing's hand and walked around, Bai Xing still had a lingering fear. She did not know how much she had bought because the bags she bought had been sent home. Therefore, she had no idea how much she had bought. Did we buy a lot? Gu Qingze glanced at her and said honestly, I don't mind buying a little more. It would be best if we could fill up the entire walk-in closet. The walk-in closet in the apartment was very big. However, Gu Qingze's clothes only took up a small space. His clothes were very simple. Most of them were of the same style. This was because he did not like to waste time and energy buying clothes. If Chu Ho had not reminded him to always wear the same style of clothes, people would inevitably think that he did not change his clothes. Therefore, when Gu Qingze bought clothes, he chose a few more styles and took turns to wear them. Her clothes did not take up a lot of space. In fact, they only took up 1 closet throughout the year. This was including the clothes he bought for her. As a husband, how could he not feel sorry for his wife? That cloakroom is already very big. So, you should buy more. Don't always look empty. What if it's full? What if we buy it next time? You should at least leave some space. Bai Yan sighed. Gu Qingze indulged her too much. If this went on, would she become arrogant because she was pampered? However, Gu Qingze felt that it would be best to spoil her until she had a princess syndrome. The happiest thing for a woman was to be pampered like a princess by a man. Alright, don't buy any more. Bai Ran said, don't buy clothes and bags. I've bought enough today. Come back next time. Gu Qingze looked at her. Why? You look so scared. Are you afraid that I'll go bankrupt? Bai Hao said firmly, even if you go bankrupt, I'll pay for it with you. What am I afraid of? Gu Qingze's heart warmed. He knew that her words were definitely not just for show. She could definitely do it. Through thick and thin. Gu Qingze patted her head. It's done. I won't buy it, but I won't buy the bag and clothes. There's one thing I have to buy. Bai Hao was intrigued. What is it? Chapter 46-72. 5 minutes later. Gu Qingze brought Bai Yan to the Cartier counter. It was only when Bai Yan saw the diamond rings and necklaces displayed in the counter that she suddenly realized what this man meant by having to buy something that he had no choice but to buy. A ring? Bai Yan was a little surprised. Actually, she was different from ordinary girls. She liked clothes more. Perhaps she was a fashion major, so she was more sensitive and liked fashion. As for diamonds, she didn't like them that much. However, a diamond ring meant something different to her. To her, this was a kind of token. The shop assistant welcomed them warmly. Good afternoon, sir, madam. Are you here to choose a diamond ring? Yes. May I ask if you are looking for an engagement ring or a wedding ring? Gu Qingze glanced at Bai Yayan and said, "An engagement ring." "A wedding ring." Bai Yayan said, "We're already married. Let's just buy a wedding ring." The shop assistant began to introduce enthusiastically, "May I ask what the budget price is?" "I can introduce it to you." "No need." Gu Qingze said, "Let her choose for herself." "Oh, okay." The shop assistant stood in front of the counter and looked at Bai Yayan with a smile. Bai Yayan looked at the various styles of diamond rings displayed in the display cabinet. At a glance, they were all dazzling. In addition, the lights in jewelry counters like this were especially bright. For a moment, she felt dazzled. "Actually, it doesn't matter what I wear." Gu Qingze took a fancy to a diamond ring that was placed in the most eye-catching position. The diamond was especially big, about a carat in size. He pointed at the diamond ring and said to the shop assistant, "Is it convenient for me to take a look at this design?" "Of course it's convenient." As the shop assistant spoke, she skillfully put on velvet gloves and carefully took out the diamond ring. Bai Yayan saw the diamond ring and immediately said, "I don't like it very much." "What's wrong?" The shop assistant was also a little surprised. This diamond ring's design is very unique. Also, the diamond's clarity is very high, it's too big. Too big? This was the first time the shop assistant had seen a woman say that a diamond was too big. After all, the bigger the diamond, the more capital it was to show off. Unless, of course, she was poor. Only the poor would dislike a diamond that was too big. After all, you get what you pay for. The bigger the diamond, the more expensive it would be. The shop assistant immediately looked disappointed. Seeing the man's good temperament, she thought that she had welcomed a big client. Gu Qingze laughed. "Isn't it good to have a bigger diamond?" "I don't think it's convenient." "If it's inconvenient, just take it off." The shop assistant pretended to be casual and said, "Women who wear diamond rings of more than 1 carat don't need to do housework. Even if they wear it when taking a bath, they won't feel inconvenienced. It's such a big diamond. It's easy to get caught when you're wearing clothes. Then take it off first and put it on after you put on your clothes." But Bai Ran didn't realize that the clerk had changed her attitude. She said quietly, "Since the diamond ring is a token of marriage, I've never thought of taking it off since I put it on." Gu Qingze looked at her silently. Chapter 4673. Once the ring was put on, she would never take it off again. For some reason, Gu Qingze felt comforted when he heard this. Perhaps this was the feeling of happiness? There was a woman who was willing to put on a diamond ring for him and never take it off. Indeed, this was the meaning of a diamond ring. The diamond did not need a huge carat. The design was new and easy to wear. That was enough. Thinking of this, Gu Qingze said to the salesperson, "No need for a ring holder. It's best if the diamond is inlaid." "Do you have it?" "Yes." The salesperson knew that this business was not going to be a big one, so her service attitude was much lower. She scanned the counter perfunctorily and said in a dispirited voice, "However, there aren't many of these designs. Also, such rings don't have any special meaning. Usually, rings have ring holders. Not only do they look good, but they also have a special meaning." As the salesperson spoke, the store manager walked over from behind. When she saw Gu Qingze, she was shocked and immediately walked over fearfully. Gu Qingze knew that the store manager recognized him. He shushed her and signaled for her not to make a fuss. The store manager pursed her lips and did not say, "Mr. Gu, why are you here?" in the end. The salesperson saw that the store manager had arrived and immediately became enthusiastic. "Store manager, you're back." "Yes." The store manager saw that Gu Qingze had a woman with him and frowned as if she had guessed something. "This, sir, are you bringing your girlfriend to choose a diamond ring?" Gu Qingze heard this and corrected her seriously, "Not my girlfriend, my wife." "Wife?" Bai Yong heard this and felt an inexplicable warmth in her heart. His serious tone made it seem like she was not allowed to make any mistakes as Mrs. Gu. This was his affirmation of her. "Wife," The store manager heard this and looked at Bai Yong enviously. This woman was so lucky to be able to marry Gu Qingze. Jinbai International was owned by the Gu Corporation. Gu Qingze was the eldest son of the Gu family and one of the future heirs of the Gu Corporation. Although Gu Jingnian was very strict with the selection of heirs, the Gu family had so many businesses that there might be more than one heir. Therefore, the store manager was especially respectful of Gu Qingze. After all, he was one of the future heirs, so she had to be respectful. What kind of design do you like? If you like it, you can try it on. It wouldn't matter if he just took it away. Gu Qingze suddenly took a fancy to a ring. It didn't have a ring holder, and the diamonds were inlaid in rows. It was simple but not simple, and looked very exquisite. What does this ring look like? The ring of the male ring is thicker than this one. The store manager said as she squatted down to find the men's ring in the cabinet and took it out. However, she was still a little hesitant. Is the diamond too small? She thought that Gu Qingze didn't know how to pick and chose the smaller one. He was afraid that Bai Ran would not be satisfied. Unexpectedly, Gu Qingze's gaze was very similar to Bai Kun's. She was also very satisfied with the design of the ring. I quite like this one. I can try it on. It can't be. The store manager was completely dumbfounded. This was a ring designed for ordinary people. The price was relatively low, only a few thousand yuan. To Gu Qingze, a low price of a few thousand yuan was too low class. Chapter 4674. No, I think this design looks pretty good on me. In fact, Bai Ran was not worried about money. Instead, she felt that love and marriage did not need an expensive diamond ring to prove it. This was just a keepsake, so there was no need to put the cart before the horse. Only then did the store manager understand her intentions. Bai Ran had repeatedly emphasized that she really liked this diamond ring and did not care about its value. Hence, he carefully took it out for her. Bai Ran tried it on. Her fingers were relatively slender. Although there were some light calluses on her index finger because of her design studies, her ring finger was straight. Hence, the ring was just right when she put it on. It was even a little big, but it would not fall off. Gu Qingze looked at it and mumbled, "Isn't it too big?" "No, it won't fall off." The manager continued, "If you think the size is too small, these can all be adjusted. Since you're getting married, it's better to leave some space. In the future, if you get pregnant, your body will have edema. Many customers buy diamond rings that are just right. Then, because they're pregnant, their fingers get stuck and it takes a lot of effort to remove them. So now, we usually suggest that the size of the diamond ring is slightly bigger, but it won't fall off. It's just right." Gu Qingze felt that it made sense. Bai Ran also liked it. What about the man's ring? The manager also took out the man's ring. It was just right on Gu Qingze's finger. The two of them placed their hands together. His hand was very big, one size bigger than hers. It was just enough to wrap around her. When their hands were placed together, they were both slender and fair. They were completely qualified to be hand models. It's so beautiful. It wasn't the most beautiful design, but it looked so good on the two of them. Most importantly, it had a good foundation. Then, this one? Bai Ran looked at Gu Qingze. The two of them looked at each other and smiled tacitly. Okay. After paying the bill, the ring was put on her finger. Since it was a wedding ring, Bai Ran had no intention of taking it off. She didn't like jewelry, but this ring had a special meaning to her. The two of them left arm in arm. On the way home, Gu Qingze was driving while Bai Ran kept looking at his hand. Occasionally, he would raise his hand and spread his fingers to make various poses. At that time, it was close to dusk. Under the dim yellow light, the diamond ring on his finger emitted a bright and dazzling light. So beautiful. Hearing this, Gu Qingze smiled. Is the ring beautiful? Yes, but my hands are more beautiful. No matter what ring it is, it will look good on my finger. Gu Qingze didn't know whether to laugh or cry at her narcissism. He couldn't help but reach out his hand and place it on the back of her hand. His fingers intertwined with Bai Ran's, and at this moment, his heart felt as if it was filled to the brim. That's great. Gu Qingze said this out of the blue. What's good? It feels good to have a home. Gu Qingze said sincerely, in the past, I didn't feel anything special about marriage. But now, I feel that marriage isn't just about those fancy and solemn ceremonies. It's about a sense of belonging. Why do you suddenly feel this way? Because. Chapter 46-75. Speaking of your parents, Baiyu rubbed her chin and said curiously, I'm also very curious. What do your parents look like? Why are you curious? Because, she blushed and said hesitantly, because if you're so handsome, your mother should be very beautiful and your father should be very handsome. Gu Qingze also hesitated for a long time and explained seriously, actually. My father is prettier and my mother is more handsome. What did he mean? Beautiful father-in-law? Handsome mother-in-law? No matter how one looked at it, it was hard to match this description. Seeing that Baiyu was so curious, Gu Qingze also became enthusiastic. Why don't I arrange for you to meet my parents? It's not that you don't want to, Baiyu was a little embarrassed. Gu Qingze said helplessly, how am I not willing to? It's not like I've accepted it with you. Their hearts are more delicate. I don't know how you feel about me. What if I introduce you to them first and you're not satisfied with me and we don't make it to the end? They won't be able to take it if their daughter-in-law flies away. Was that so? Baiyu did not know whether to laugh or cry. She immediately held his hand and gave him an affirmative answer. Don't worry, I won't fly away. Since I'm already married to you, I must learn to be a good wife. There's no need for you to worry. Then, tomorrow it is. Gu Qingze held her hand and heaved a sigh of relief. What she meant by this was that she had already decided on him and would not waver. He understood it that way too, right? Baiyu could not help but look forward to it. I'm so looking forward to meeting my parents-in-law. But isn't it too abrupt? We didn't even tell them about our marriage. My mom probably knows, but as for my dad. Su Qingsang said. Gu Qingze thought for a while. Chu Ho probably would not tell Gu Jinglian about this so quickly. Baiyu really started to imagine. It was so strange. She could not imagine how Gu Qingze's parents would look like. Beautiful father-in-law? Handsome mother-in-law? It was really difficult for her to imagine. However, since Gu Qingze was so gentle, her parents-in-law should be kind as well, right? The two old men lived in an ordinary and simple apartment and treated each other with respect. Because Gu Qingze said that the two of them were very loving. However, all these fantasies were shattered when Bai Ran stood at the entrance of the Gu mansion, which was heavily guarded and unadorned. The entire Gu residence occupied the most expensive piece of land in the capital. It could be said that every inch of land was worth gold. Not only that. She didn't know why, but when she stood in front of this old mansion, it gave her a very oppressive feeling. It was as if dark clouds were pressing down on her. How familiar, Bai Hao furrowed his brows, looking at the high threshold. He felt familiar with this door. Had she been here before? If she had been here before, why didn't she remember? If he hadn't been here before, why did he give her the feeling that he had been here before? What happened? Gu Qingze saw that she had been standing at the door motionlessly. He walked over and gently pinched her face. You haven't even seen your in-laws and you're already nervous? No, she was not too nervous, although she was indeed a little nervous. However. Chapter 46-76. Gu Qingze held her hand and walked into the Gu mansion. Hello, young master. Hello, second young master. Hello, young master Qingze. Along the way, the servants bowed and greeted him. Baiyu felt her scalp go numb. The rules were strict. What era was this? There was still such a clear hierarchy. Although these people kept addressing Gu Qingze as young master, there was no humility in their eyes when they looked at him. Instead, there was a doting look in their eyes. It was as if their beloved junior had finally returned. It was a very friendly and natural attitude. However, they kept addressing him as young master, which made Bai Yu feel a lot of pressure. 10 minutes later. In the living room, Bai Yu stood in front of Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho in a daze. It turned out that on the way here, she had a blueprint of Gu Qingza's father and mother. However, after Gu Qingza introduced Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho to her seriously, Bai Yu had to admit that she was petrified. Too old. Too old. Okay. Especially Gu Jinglian. In her impression, he was from her father's generation. It was normal for his face to have some wrinkles and his skin to be rougher. However, Gu Jinglian felt that there was no change. It would be better to say that his facial features had not changed much. After all, he was no longer young. Although it could not be compared to when his face was full of collagen when he was young, whether it was his facial features or his appearance, there was a sense of maturity that had been settled over the years. Speaking of changes, there were still some, but it was a kind of transformation from the high-spirited and vigorous youth to a mature and steady change. However, if Gu Qingza were to introduce Gu Jinglian as his elder brother and not his father, Bai Ran would probably foolishly believe it. Too young, Chu Ho was even younger. She didn't use expensive skincare products, but her skin was completely different from her peers. Bai Yu was dumbfounded. It was not only because of their youthful appearance, but also because of Chu Ho's familiar face. It reminded her that this woman had come to the house before. Moreover, she claimed to be Gu Qingza's aunt. How did she suddenly become her mother-in-law? Furthermore, it was just as Gu Qingza had said. In terms of facial features, Gu Jinglian was much more beautiful than Chu Ho. Even though he was a little older, he still had a special charm, especially his eyes. Even Gu Qingza did not inherit any of it. Otherwise, Bai Ran would definitely feel unbalanced seeing a man who was more beautiful than her lying beside her every day. Chu Ho felt guilty when he saw Bai Ran. She silently covered her face and turned to the side. Of course, Gu Qingza could tell that Chu Ho was obviously feeling guilty. He sneered, "Mom, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" Cough, cough, cough. Chu Ho coughed exaggeratedly a few times. Gu Jinglian's hand, which was holding the teacup, trembled in fright. He looked at his wife in disdain and muttered, "What's wrong?" My throat doesn't feel well. Have some tea." Cough, 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 Chu Ho coughed again. Gu Qingza held back his laughter and looked at Bai Ran, who had been stunned for a long time. He gently bumped her shoulder and asked, "Is your throat not feeling well too?" No. Chapter 46-77. Uncle? Auntie? Gu Qingza was amused by her silly cuteness. He reminded her, "We're already married. Isn't it inappropriate to call them uncle and auntie?" Then what should I call them? Father-in-law? No, Bai Yayan had forgotten what those two titles meant. She was so anxious that her face turned red. She tried her best to think, but because of her nervousness, she could not remember. Gu Jinglian was still calm. He reminded her in a low voice, "Those two titles are father-in-law and mother-in-law." Chu Ho nudged him from the side. "Don't talk with a straight face. What if you scare your daughter-in-law?" Gu Jinglian glanced at her resentfully. "Oh please." He was more nervous than she was, okay? Gu Jinglian also thought that since it was his daughter-in-law's first visit, he should have a proper attitude. At least, he should not appear too cold. However, he should still have a basic level of stability. In the end, with this stability, his authority as the head of the Gu family was uncontrollably revealed. Aura was a very mysterious thing. Gu Qingza had been cultivating for so many years, but he could not cultivate Gu Jinglian's natural aura. He just sat there without smiling. Occasionally, when he raised his eyebrows slightly, it was incomparably sharp. Bai Yayan was so frightened that she did not dare to speak carelessly. She even forgot how to speak. "Hello, father-in-law, mother-in-law," Bai Yayan greeted them fearfully. Gu Jinglian drank his tea satisfactorily. Chu Ho clicked his tongue again. Don't just drink your tea. Your daughter-in-law is calling you. Could she let him finish this mouthful of tea? Gu Jinglian glared at Chu Ho, who also glared back confidently. He admitted defeat. He cleared his throat and reached out to calm her down. Don't be too nervous. You're making me nervous for nothing. Pfft, perhaps because she was too nervous, Gu Jinglian's words seemed to soften her nerves. She couldn't help but laugh at Gu Jinglian's helpless tone. She didn't expect him to be nervous even though he looked so serious. Could it be that the reason why he looked so serious just now was because he was nervous? Gu Jinglian was indeed nervous. After all, this was the first time in his life that he had become a father-in-law. Naturally, he had to be careful lest he scared his daughter-in-law away. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Gu Jinglian looked at Chu Ho looked at Gu Qingze looked at Bai Ran, and Bai Ran looked at Gu Jinglian timidly. The four of them suddenly cleared their throats in unison. Amazing. Gu Qingze broke out in a cold sweat. If they were not a family, they would not enter the same house. However, this tacit understanding shouldn't be reflected on this level, right? Although Gu Jinglian was no longer so nervous, he was a man of few words, so he didn't know how to break the silence. On the other hand, Chu Ho clapped his hands lightly and said, Ran, right? Don't just stand there. Come and sit beside me. When Bai Ran heard this, she walked to her side. Chu Ho smiled at her and said, From now on, I'll call you Ran, okay? Okay, Ran, so familiar. Gu Qingze would sometimes call her that too. Although Bai Ran felt a little strange, she quickly ignored it. Chu Ho was also observing her reaction. Bai Ran had also come to the Gu residence when she was young. Now, she was stepping into the Gu residence again as his daughter-in-law. While she was happy, she was also a little suspicious. Chapter 46-78. Ah, right, I remember now. Chu Ho suddenly thought of something and winked at Bai Yu mysteriously. Come with me. As she spoke, she grabbed Bai Yu's hand and ran upstairs. The father and son were left in a daze. Gu Jinglian and Gu Qingze looked at each other, not understanding what was going on. Chu Ho dragged Bai Yu by the hand. As she went up the stairs, she asked carefully, Auntie, what's the matter? You'll know when you come with me. She was dragged into the room by Chu Ho. Bai Yu panted a few times and finally calmed her breathing. She finally remembered to ask, Auntie, I have something to ask you. Bai Yu stood at the door a little uneasily, but Chu Ho had already thrown her at the door and started to rummage through the cabinets. Auntie, was it you who came to our house last time? I remember it was here. Why can't I find it? Auntie. Yes, it's here. Bai Yu asked again with concern, was it you who came to our house last time? Chu Ho realized what Bai Yu had asked and pursed her lips in embarrassment. She was not good at talking, so she simply admitted it directly. It was me. I didn't expect you to have such sharp eyes and recognize me immediately. It's really you. Bai Yu saw that it was really her and felt even more embarrassed. Because he knew that his son got married, he didn't tell me. I only found out about this through someone else. How can I not be angry? Since he didn't bring his daughter-in-law to see me, I had to visit him personally. Bai Yu felt a little guilty. Auntie, I'm sorry. I should have visited you earlier. It's just that. It was just that the marriage was too rushed and she felt a little embarrassed. After all, the issue of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law was something she had never thought about before. She was not mentally prepared to get married so quickly. However, now that she had met her in-laws, she realized that she was really blessed. Her in-laws were really prettier than her in-laws. Gu Qingze wasn't lying. Moreover, her mother-in-law was not as serious as she had imagined. Instead, she gave her the feeling that she was very young. Found it. Chu Ho suddenly took out a large photo album. Bai Kun was dumbfounded. That was because this photo album was extraordinarily large. Moreover, she seemed to have taken good care of it. There was no dust. Come here, Chu He waved at her, beckoning her over. Bai Ran walked over and Chu Ho placed the photo album on the bed. This was Gu Qingze's personal photo album. Seeing that Bai Ran did not seem to recognize Gu Qingze, she thought that perhaps Gu Qingze's appearance had changed so much after he grew up that Bai Ran could not recognize him. He thought that he might as well show her Gu Qingze's childhood photos. Perhaps Bai Ran could recognize Gu Qingze from his childhood photos. After all, childhood memories were limited. Not everyone could remember everything that happened when they were young so clearly. Chu Ho flipped open the album and pointed at one of the photos. In the photo, Gu Qingze was leaning against a statue with an unwilling look on his face. Gu Qingze was especially cute when he was young. Chapter 46-79. Bai Ran was mesmerized by the photo. Firstly, she felt that Gu Qingze was too adorable when he was young. Although Gu Qingze was also very good-looking now, his features were well-defined and he was quite handsome. Compared to his current skinny body, his chubby baby fat was really cute. However, it was a little familiar. Where had she seen it before? Bai Hao held the album. He didn't open it, and his eyes didn't move. He just gazed at the picture for a long time. When Chu He saw this, she observed his reaction while hoping that he would look at the photo and remember something. How is it? She asked tentatively. Bai Ran came to her senses and looked up with a smile. Yes, it's very cute. Seeing that she didn't seem to remember anything, Chu Ho couldn't help but look disappointed. Bai Ran continued flipping through the photo album. After flipping through a few pages, she suddenly stopped. She saw that in the middle of the photo album was a group photo. Gu Qingze was holding a pretty little girl in his arms, and Bai's doll was standing beside him. The two of them were grinning from ear to ear. However, compared to the reluctant smile on his face in the previous photos, his expression in this photo was especially bashful, and there was a hint of youthfulness in it. The little girl beside him was exactly the same as she was when she was young. Bai Ran stared intently at the photo and stopped flipping through it. Chu Ho saw this and became excited. This girl was Qingze's best friend when he was young. Her name is also Bai Ran. Don't you think it's a coincidence? She's also called Bai Ran? Bai Ran's expression became even more suspicious. Yes, but when she was still in kindergarten, something happened to her family, so she transferred schools. Something happened? Yes. Her parents got into a car accident. At that time, her mother was still pregnant. Because of the car accident, only this little girl was left. In the end, I heard that she was sent to the countryside to study. Slap, Bai Ran's fingers suddenly loosened, and the photo album in her hand fell onto the bed. Seeing Bai Ran's reaction, Chu Ho finally asked the question in his heart, is it exactly the same as when you were young? Bai Ran, don't you remember Xiao Bao? Xiao Bao, yes. This was Qingze's childhood nickname. Ha ha ha, speaking of this nickname, it's really interesting. When Qingze was young, he liked me to call him Xiao Bao. However, when he entered junior high school, he strongly rejected this name. The little guy had matured and started to know how to save face. He kept complaining that this nickname was too silly. So from then on, I started calling him Qingze instead of Xiao Bao. White light dots flashed in Bai Hao's head when he heard the name. The memories of his youth were pieced together in bits and pieces. You are Bai Yan, right? Chu Ho smiled and asked, although I guessed it, I didn't dare to ask. Because Qingze has always remembered you, but you don't. Some people said that there were too many bad memories when they were young. People would selectively seal those memories and not remember them. Indeed, your childhood was very happy. But because of your parents' car accident, you must have a lot of bad memories when you were young. You don't want to remember them, right? Unknowingly, Bai Hao opened his eyes and a tear rolled down his cheek. She lowered her head awkwardly. I remember now, she closed her eyes and finally dug out those fragmented fragments from the depths of her memory. Chapter 46-80. Chu Ho was stunned. Fierce uncle, Chu. Gu Jinglian suddenly sneezed. He was feeding the parrot when the sudden sneeze scared the parrot so much that it jumped up and down on the pole. "There's a typhoon! There's a typhoon!" The parrot opened its beak and cried. Gu Jinglian glanced at it coldly. "What typhoon? I just sneezed. This stupid bird. Speaking of which, why did it sneeze for no reason? Was someone criticizing him behind his back?" Gu Jinglian rubbed his nose and continued feeding the bird. "Ha ha ha ha." Chu Ho was laughing so hard that she couldn't straighten her back. "Fierce uncle. So Uncle Jinglian is a fierce person in your memory? He looks very fierce and gives people a very cold feeling, ha 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 ha." Chu Ho was laughing so hard that tears were coming out of her eyes. She glanced at Bai Ran helplessly and couldn't help but reach out to scratch her nose gently. "All right, don't cry anymore. This is a good thing. You've suffered a lot in the past, but now that you're married to Qingze, he won't let you suffer anymore." Chu Ho was coaxing her, but when she heard her words, she couldn't control her tears anymore. She had never expected to feel such warmth. It seemed that no one other than her father and mother had ever treated her so well. "Qingze is really good to me," Bai Ran said sadly, "but I'm afraid that I'm not good enough and can't repay him, your husband and wife." "How can you use the word repay? Do you think marriage is about repaying a debt of gratitude?" Chu Ho said helplessly. I don't care how you were in the past. From now on, you don't have to be so humble. I know that it's rare for others to treat you well, so if they treat you well, you can't wait to repay them tenfold. But you don't have to be like this to us." Bai Ran sobbed but couldn't say anything. He hugged her tightly in her arms and patted her back gently. "What a pity. Actually, at that time, I had a discussion with my fierce uncle and wanted to adopt you. However, I didn't expect that you would be sent to the countryside to study. I still remember that Qingze was always depressed during that time, as if the sky was falling down. It seems that after that day, his personality changed a little. He became a little more mature, but also a little more taciturn. He didn't like to laugh or talk as much as before." Bai Hao was surprised. "He still remembers me? What else? Otherwise, why would he marry you?" "Because he recognized you. After so many years, he never forgot about you. The photo of you was stored carefully, and it didn't even change color." During that time, Gu Qingze was indeed depressed for a long time. She originally thought that it wouldn't take long for him to forget about this matter. Who would have thought that Bai Yan would remain in his heart for more than 10 years? He had never forgotten her and had always remembered her. Bai Ran was deeply touched. Actually, she didn't forget Gu Qingze, the Xiao Bao who always liked to play with her when they were young. However, the memories before and after her parents' death were too gray. She didn't want to keep remembering them, so she sealed him away as well. Chapter 4681. You stay here and look at the photos. I'll go downstairs and prepare dinner. Okay. Bai Yan nodded in silence. Chu Ho pushed the door open and walked away. Bai Ran sat on the bed and quietly flipped through the photos. After a while, footsteps came from the door. She was so engrossed in looking through the photos that she did not notice the sound of footsteps. By the time she heard it, Gu Qingze was already behind her. He hugged her waist from behind and asked gently, "What are you looking at?" "Looking at photos of you when you were young." Gu Qingze blushed immediately. He followed her finger to the photo album and was about to snatch it when Bai Ran stopped him. "What are you doing? There's nothing to look at." "No way." Bai Ran said seriously, "I think you were very cute when you were young." Gu Qingze blushed inexplicably because he was shy. "Really? Yeah, has no one ever praised you like that? Mom has always kept the photo album. I won't show it to anyone else." Bai Ran suddenly looked into his eyes and stopped talking. Gu Qingze looked into her eyes. At first, he could still pretend to be calm, but gradually, his breathing quickened. Bai Ran's deep gaze made him feel like he was being scrutinized for some reason. It was not that he felt uncomfortable, but he felt that her gaze seemed to be probing something. What's wrong? He could not help but ask. Bai Ran asked without rhyme or reason, why didn't you say so earlier? Huh? He was surprised and did not understand what she meant. Why didn't you say so earlier? Your Xiao Bao, Gu Qingze was stunned. Before Bai Ran could say anything, Gu Qingze covered his face in embarrassment. Don't call me Xiao Bao anymore, Bai Ran laughed out loud. When we were young, you hated the name Gu Qingze. Did I? Yes. Bai Ran still remembered. You said that Xiao Bao was the name your mother gave you, and Qingze was the name your father gave you. Since you were young, you liked your mother more than your father, so you liked the name Xiao Bao more and didn't like me calling you Qingze. Now, why do you suddenly not like me calling you Xiao Bao? Do you think it's too old-fashioned? Gu Qingze was surprised. He stared blankly at Bai Kun and felt slight disbelief. Do you still remember? Yes, of course I remember. Then, Gu Qingze felt inexplicably nervous. He rarely showed this side of him in front of her. Carefully, he asked her, will you regret it? Do you regret it because you remember that you're Xiao Bao? Yes. Bai Hao begrudgingly said, if I regretted it, would I talk to you like that? Idiot. After finding out that he was little treasure when he was young, Bai Ran no longer had that strange sense of alienation towards Gu Qingze. In an instant, she felt that this man had become intimate. When they were young, the two of them were close friends. When they grew up, this name gradually faded along with the painful memories. But now, when she remembered the intimate past when they were young, other than longing, she felt a sense of intimacy towards him. Chapter 4682. Why should I regret it? I've liked you since we were young. Bai Xing's words made Gu Qingze's heart skip a beat. He had never thought that Bai Xing had liked him since they were young. In his memory, Bai Xing was an out-and-out goddess-like figure. When they were in kindergarten, the children didn't understand the love between adults at all. They did not know what love was, but they knew what liking was. There would also be such feelings of admiration between children. The greatest manifestation of admiration was that many boys were very willing to play with Bai Xing. No matter how mischievous a boy was, as long as he stood in front of Bai Xing, he would be shy, his hands would intertwine, and he would be bashful. Gu Qingze naturally admired Bai Xing too. Therefore, to him, Bai Xing was the most beautiful white moonlight in his heart. What was the white moonlight? Beautiful, yearning, but untouchable. However, when Bai Xing told him that she liked him too, Gu Qingze's expression did not change, but his heart was like fireworks blooming. Bai Xing looked at him like this, especially when she saw his slightly flushed handsome face. It was just like when Xiao Bao had just been transferred to the class when they were young. He stood on the podium with an awkward expression. He looked around with yearning and a hint of timidity in his eyes. At this moment, Bai Xing took the initiative to walk forward and give him a big hug. At that time, Xiao Bao's face immediately turned red and he looked a little shy. Chu Ho walked down the stairs. When Gu Jinglian saw her, he immediately walked over with a gossipy expression. What do you mean? Chu Ho looked puzzled. What do you mean? Gu Jinglian asked seriously, is this considered the legendary meeting of the parents? Yes. Chu Ho looked at him as if he was an idiot. Congratulations, you're going to be a father-in-law. Okay. Gu Jinglian clapped his hands lightly. I thought he would never find a wife in this lifetime. The corner of Chu Ho's eyes twitched. How much do you look down on your own son? This is the daughter of the Bai clan. What if she isn't? Gu Jinglian asked matter-of-factly, what if the two children are not fated to meet? This kid isn't even 30 years old yet. If we don't push him, he definitely won't be willing. I can only say that he's more loyal. Once he puts someone in his heart, he won't be willing to let go. Chu Ho paused for a moment, feeling a lingering fear in his heart. Indeed. Gu Qingze and Bai Xing were fated to meet again. If the two of them did not meet again in this lifetime, who knew when Gu Qingze would be able to walk out of this knot in his heart? Gu Jinglian walked to the birdcage and reached out to play with the bird. Chu Ho said, since the child is already married, then we should prepare for the wedding. We can't let other girls suffer. All right, I'll leave it to you. Gu Jinglian said in a casual tone. Chu Ho said disdainfully, why do you look like you don't care? Why don't you care about your son's wedding at all? My son is getting married, not me. Why should I be in a hurry? Gu Jinglian said to the parrot, don't you think so? The parrot suddenly straightened its neck and rolled its eyes. Then, it repeated, call me daddy. Call me daddy. Gu Jinglian felt as if he had been splashed with a bucket of cold water. Chapter 4683. Call me daddy. Call me daddy. The parrot straightened its neck and hooted a few more times. Gu Jinglian's face darkened even more. Chu Ho held back his laughter, not knowing what to say. In the beginning, Gu Jinglian taught the parrot to speak with the intention of teaching it to call him daddy. Therefore, he guided it patiently and said, call me daddy, call me daddy. In the end, the parrot copied his words verbatim. It rarely opened its mouth. Only when Gu Jinglian was in a bad mood did it cry out happily. Gu Qingze and Bai Xing came down hand in hand. When the parrot heard footsteps, it turned its head and saw Bai Xing walking over with Gu Qingze. It jumped over, wagged its tail, and whistled. Hoo, beauty. Beauty. This parrot actually knew how to flirt. Gu Jinglian was drinking tea. When he heard that the parrot was flirting with his daughter-in-law, he was so shocked that he almost spat out his tea. Bai Xing did not notice the parrot at first. She only heard someone whistle at her and seemed to be calling her a beauty. However, she did not know where this call came from. Seeing that Bai Xing was ignoring it, the parrot clicked its tongue a few more times. Gu Qingze also heard the sound of this lousy parrot. He turned his head and saw the parrot standing on the pole in the birdcage. Its neck was twisting back and forth as if it was annoyed that Gu Qingze's body was blocking Bai Xing. Bai Xing followed Gu Qingze's gaze and looked at the parrot. Only then did she realize that its head was bobbing rhythmically in the birdcage. She was surprised for a moment and asked Gu Qingze, can this parrot talk? Yes, my dad often teaches it. Oh. Bai Xing could not help but be curious. She walked in front of the birdcage and reached out her hand. The snow-white little guy in the birdcage also stared at her curiously. It suddenly spread its wings and the feathers on its head relaxed. Then, it made a sound like tsk, tsk, tisk. Beauty, kiss me, kiss me. Pfft, Bai Xing was amused by this parrot. She glanced at Gu Qingze in confusion. How did it learn? In her impression, Gu Jinglian was a particularly cold and elegant man. She couldn't imagine that he was a man who would teach a parrot to say these words. My father didn't teach me that. Then who is it? Bai Xing was even more curious. Gu Qingze pointed at himself. I didn't teach her on purpose. My mother said the bird was female. I couldn't remember what it was called, so I called it Beauty. Although it had learned how to call a beauty from me, it had never stared at a girl and called her a beauty before. Could it be that this stupid bird can also recognize that you are a great beauty? Chu Ho smiled and complained, I'm still considered a beauty, right? But I've never seen it chase after me and call me a beauty. Gu Jinglian suddenly said, maybe it's not interested in old people anymore. Bang! In front of Bai Xing, Chu Ho mercilessly threw a punch. Gu Qingze covered his face in embarrassment. Bai Xing was dumbfounded. Gu Jinglian seemed to be used to it. He covered his shoulder and remained silent. Well, Gu Qingze lowered his head and whispered in her ear, my mother is a little violent, but it's not serious. Moreover, it's targeted. Targeted? Chapter 4684. Yeah, usually. She only targets me and my dad. When Bai Yu heard this, she laughed. You're already so old. Would your mom still hit you? Gu Qingze glanced at Chu He meaningfully and said with a smile, now that he's married, I don't think he'll do it again. Oh, when Chu Ho heard this, he immediately said, I've already talked to Qingze. As long as he's married, I definitely won't lay a finger on him. Ha ha ha. Bai Yu could no longer maintain her ladylike image and laughed out loud. Even Gu Jinglian, who was staring calmly from the side, looked over curiously. He also did not expect that the quiet and sweet Bai Yu would let out such a bold laugh. When she sensed that Gu Jinglian was looking in her direction, Bai Yu was so scared that her mouth was still open. Her laughter stopped abruptly and she quickly hid her expression. She immediately stood properly like an obedient student. Chu Ho was dumbfounded. It was said that since ancient times, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were the most incompatible. Why was Bai Yu afraid of Gu Jinglian more than she was of her? Chu Ho turned to glare at Gu Jinglian and warned, "If you continue to glare at your daughter-in-law so fiercely, she might run away." Gu Jinglian looked defeated and wronged. He raised his hand and touched his face. He muttered, "Am I fierce?" Gu Xianxia said, "You look fierce." Gu Jinglian was speechless. Chu Ho said, "Bai Yu, stay tonight." Bai Yu looked at Gu Xianxia. He was also looking at her. He silently squeezed her hand and said, "Stay, okay? My mom is happier to see you than she is to see me." Bai Yu was extremely touched. What did she do to deserve this? They had clearly been separated for so many years, but the boy in her heart still remembered her. Moreover, she did not have to face those difficult mother-in-law and daughter-in-law problems in the future. It was not because the Gu family was well off, but because she had a reasonable, gentle, and considerate mother-in-law. Everyone in the Gu family seemed to be getting along well. As she walked in, she occasionally bumped into a few servants, and they were all smiling. Gu Xianxia greeted them naturally, without any sense of hierarchy between master and servant. What touched her the most was that her mother-in-law was really good to her. "All right, stay." Bai Hao gladly agreed. At night, Gu Linga and Gu Xinghan also came back. Gu Jinglian finally showed a rare smile. Even when he faced Bai Hao, he didn't show such a gentle smile. He couldn't be blamed for being biased. He doted on his youngest daughter so much that Chu Ho was jealous of her later on. The relationship between father and daughter was better than anyone else's. Gu Linga had just turned 18 when Gu Jinglian gave her a villa by the sea. To everyone in the Gu family, the assets of their father's generation did not belong to them. Gu Jinglian would do an asset notarization every year to consolidate his assets. In the eyes of outsiders, he was a little heartless when it came to educating his children. If they wanted a villa or a luxury car, they could fight for it themselves. Therefore, Gu Xianxia knew how to earn his own living after graduating from school. Moreover, he did not rely on the Gu family for anything. Gu Linshi was the same. Although he worked for the Gu Corporation after graduation, the Gu Corporation did not belong to any of them. Only Gu Linga. Whatever he wanted, he had it all. Chapter 4685. Gu Jinglian did not deny the fact that he was a slave to his daughter. In his own words, he was only happy for 2 days when he had a son, the day he was born and the day he got married. When he had a daughter, he was happy from birth until the day he got married. When the father handed his daughter over to another man, he was no longer happy. He felt that he had to set an example for his future son-in-law. In the future, his son-in-law would dote on his daughter the way he doted on his wife. Gu Linga's nickname was Qianqian. The moment she returned, the servant came to inform them. In the end, Gu Jinglian stood up excitedly and walked towards the door. He could not wait a moment longer. Chu Ho's lips twitched for a while. He looked at Bai Yu and said helplessly, "Your father is like this. He dotes on Qianqian the most. When he sees Qianqian return, he looks like he has lost his soul." She seemed to feel a little guilty. She felt that Gu Jinglian did not treat her as well as his biological daughter. After all, it was her first time visiting the Gu family. "Your father," this title made Bai Yu daze for a few seconds. For a moment, she could not get used to it. When Bai Yu heard this, she heard the apology in Chu Ho's words. She smiled and said, "A daughter is a father's little jacket. If I have a daughter in the future, I'm worried that she will fight with me for favor." Gu Xianxia could not help but joke, "I used to joke that a daughter was a father's lover in his previous life." I didn't believe it in the past, but I think I have to believe it now. Gu Linga returned with Gu Xinghan. The two of them bickered all the way through the door. When they saw Gu Jinglian, Gu Linga walked over and threw herself into his arms. She hugged his shoulders and tiptoed to kiss Gu Jinglian's cheek. She smiled and wrapped her arms around his arm. Father. Why are you back so late? Gu Jinglian's tone was obviously reproachful. Gu Linga turned around and glanced at Gu Xinghan. He just got his driver's license and insisted on using my car to practice. In the end, he was so nervous the whole way that he drove 60 kilometers per hour the whole way back. When Gu Xinghan heard this, he was speechless. It's my first time driving and it's in such a congested place. To be able to drive 60 kilometers per hour is already first-rate, okay? When Gu Jinglian saw him yelling at his precious daughter, he glared at him and threatened, "If you dare to bully your sister again, I'll hit you." Gu Xinghan shrunk his neck and immediately felt aggrieved. What do you mean I bullied my sister? I'm telling the truth. Can't you drive faster? Gu Jinglian continued to lecture him. Since you know there's a traffic jam on the road, why are you still driving your sister's car? Gu Xinghan felt even more aggrieved. Dad, you're biased. It was fine if he bought a Maserati for Gu Linga, but when it was his turn, he did not even get a single strand of hair. Gu Jinglian said that if he wanted to drive, he had to earn money to drive. There were so many luxury cars parked in the Gu residence, but Gu Xinghan was the only one that didn't have one. Although he was young, he was the same age as Gu Linga. Gu Jinglian gave Gu Linga a Maserati, but when he wanted to buy a Mercedes-Benz, Gu Jinglian ignored him. Sob, 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 if only he was a girl too. Gu Xinghan pretended to cry and said, Dad, it's not good for you to always dote on my sister. You have to share your love equally. Gu Jinglian glared at him. Get lost. Gu Xinghan immediately gave in. Okay. He followed behind Gu Jinglian dejectedly. Chapter 4686. Even Gu Linga felt sorry for him. She said to Gu Jinglian, Dad, don't yell at him. He's quite pitiful. Gu Xinghan also sniffled as if he had been wronged, looking very disappointed. Gu Jinglian saw this but did not do anything. He let Gu Linga walk away with her arm in his. Just as Gu Xinghan was sulking, Gu Linxi's voice came from behind. Xinghan? Gu Xinghan turned around and saw Gu Linxi. He felt wronged and walked over. Big brother. Gu Linxi could not help but laugh when he saw his resentful look. What's wrong? Did Xianxian bully you again? Humph, she didn't bully me. Dad bullied me. Although Gu Xinghan and Gu Linga grew up together, they were twins after all. Most of the time, they were closer than anyone else. This was something that Gu Jinglian could not compare to. No matter how much Gu Linga bullied him, he could not bear to say anything bad about his sister when others asked. Big brother, why are you back so early today? I heard that your second sister-in-law was coming home today, so I got off work early. Second sister-in-law? Gu Xinghan was really confused. My second sister-in-law? Since when do I have a second sister-in-law? There was a very strange thing about the younger generation of the Gu family. Chu Ho and Gu Jinglian had 3 children in total. One was Gu Qingzi, one was Gu Xinghan and one was Gu Linga. They had 2 sons and 1 daughter. However, Gu Qingzi, who was supposed to be the eldest, was the second child. When Gu Qingzi was 6 years old, Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho adopted a boy named Lin Shi. After the adoption, Lin Shi took on the surname Gu. Because he was older than Gu Qingzi, he was the only one that came to mind when the eldest son of the Gu family was mentioned. Gu Jinglian treated him very well and Chu Ho treated him like his own. After so many years, Gu Linxi completely regarded himself as part of the Gu family. The Gu family was his real home. Because he was the eldest, he had the demeanor of a big brother. Therefore, after Gu Qingzi got married, Bai Ran became his second sister-in-law. Gu Xinghan's interest was piqued. Second sister-in-law, when did this happen? How could I not know? You'll have to ask your second brother. He's been married for so long, and I only found out about it recently. Gu Xinghan and Gu Linxi chatted as they walked into the main hall. At this moment, Gu Linga and Gu Jinglian were already sitting in the main hall. The little girl did not know her limits at all. She stared at Bai Ran the entire time as if she was looking at a new continent. Bai Yu was almost embarrassed by her stare. When Gu Qingzi saw this, he could not help but glare at Gu Linga. Why do you keep staring at him? It was only then that Gu Linga regained her senses, but her mouth was still full of sweetness. This is the first time I've seen such a beautiful lady. Bai Ran's face turned even redder. After all, it was his wife who was being praised. Moreover, although Gu Linga had a sweet tongue, she was very arrogant and never lied. At most, she would exaggerate a little, but she could get to the bottom of people's hearts. In her heart, she really thought that Bai Ran was very good-looking. That was why she kept staring at her. When Gu Xinghan saw Bai Ran, he pretended to be calm and walked over. However, he sat opposite Bai Ran. Although he was a little reserved, his actions showed that he cared about his second sister-in-law. Chapter 4687. Gu Qingzi said as he looked at Bai Ran. This is your second sister-in-law, Bai Ran. You can call her sister-in-law from now on. Bai Ran bowed politely to Gu Linxi and smiled. However, when her gaze landed on Gu Linxi, her eyelids twitched. This man, that day, he appeared with Chu Ho. She was a little dazed and began to wonder about this man's identity. Gu Linxi saw Bai Ran's puzzled gaze and explained with a smile, "You must be curious about who I am. This is the second time we've met. Yes, let me introduce myself. My surname is Gu and my name is Linxi. I'm Gu Qingzi's elder brother. You can call me elder brother like him." Elder brother, Bai Ran called out timidly. That was not how he introduced himself the other day. Gu Linxi explained, "I heard that Qingzi married a wife, but I've only heard her name and never seen her in person. Mom and I were curious so we went over. We don't have any bad intentions. We just wanted to see who my future sister-in-law is to be able to make my brother, who has not been close to women for 20 years, open his eyes." Gu Qingzi was speechless. "Brother, alright, I won't joke with you anymore." Gu Xinghan reacted. Me. It's my turn to introduce myself." Gu Xinghan walked in front of Gu Linxi. Although he was a little shy, he still introduced himself generously. "My name is Gu Xinghan. I'm the third child in the Gu family. I'm 18 years old and a freshman this year. Although I don't know when you got a new sister-in-law, if anyone bullies you in the future, just tell them my name." Gu Linga said sarcastically, "Come on, why would I tell them your name? Do you want to get beaten up twice?" Pfft! Bai Ran burst out laughing and looked at Gu Qingzi curiously. "What do you mean by, get beaten up twice?" Gu Qingzi laughed and explained, "My brother doesn't have any other strengths, but he's very good at fighting." "Fighting?" "He's very good at fighting. He can probably fight an entire grade alone." Gu Qingzi was clearly complaining, but Gu Xinghan felt that it was a great compliment. He felt especially proud and puffed out his chest. Gu Qingzi continued, "That's why this kid has made a lot of enemies out there. However, they can't beat him and don't dare to touch him. But it's not the same for you. If you tell them his name, they might not want to hit you at first, but once they hear his name, you'll be in trouble." Bai Hao shivered inexplicably. How terrifying. Gu Xinghan was momentarily embarrassed. "Brother. Why are you exposing me?" "The truth." Gu Linga looked at Gu Xinghan and immediately said, "Moreover, he often takes credit outside. If you mention his name, you might be chased by a group of people to collect debts." When Gu Xinghan saw that his underwear was about to be overturned, he anxiously tried to cover her mouth. Gu Linga could not dodge in time and half of her face was covered. Ha 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 ha. Bai Hao couldn't help but laugh. Then, he realized that he had lost his manners by laughing like that. He pursed his lips and blushed. "I couldn't help it. I'm sorry." Chapter 4688. Bai Ran was speechless. Firstly, she was shocked that Gu Linga had so much pocket money. Secondly, she was shocked that Gu Xinghan was so pitiful. Is it that exaggerated? Bai Ran gently tugged at Gu Qing's sleeve and said with some heartache, "Isn't the difference in treatment between your brother and sister a little too scary? Does your family still favor girls over boys?" "Yes." Gu Qingze pouted and said, "When I was young, my father was very violent to me. I originally thought that he was like this to everyone. In the end, when my sister was born, it was incredible. The moment he came home, he would quickly carry this little princess. My sister was basically raised by him since she was young. It was only when she was 10 years old that he was willing to let her walk on the ground when she went out." Bai Ran was shocked when she heard this. At the same time, she was a little envious. Actually, her biological father did not seem to particularly like daughters. Although he doted on her, he had always said that he wanted a son. Therefore, her mother had always worked very hard to give birth to a son for him. However, a car accident brought disaster to this family. Even her unborn brother hadn't had the chance to see this world. However, Bai Ran had no idea about this. However, growing up in her aunt's house, the love that her cousin received was something that she could not compare to. Therefore, she even thought that the whole world was probably like this, favoring boys over girls. Habit was a very scary thing. She seemed to have gotten used to the rules of survival in her aunt's house. Therefore, she naturally thought that the outside world also favored boys over girls. Therefore, Bai Ran was surprised and envious of Gu Linga, who had been doted on since she was young. Gu Qingze looked at her somewhat disappointed and somewhat fascinated eyes and could not help but feel a little heartache. He could tell that she must be very envious of Gu Linga. Gu Linga saw that Bai Ran was also staring at her,